Chapter 876. You said just now that my ancestor became a master of fate, lives, and death. Su Ming closed his eyes, and when he reopened them after some time, they were calm. When the Duke of Crimson Flame saw this, praise appeared on his face. Being able to calm his emotions so quickly was undoubtedly one of the foundations for becoming a powerful warrior. It could not be said that being able to control one's emotions would definitely allow one to become a powerful warrior at the peak, but practically all powerful warriors at the peak possess this ability. Your ancestor was the sovereign of all the races in the fifth true world. He was indeed a master of fate, lives, and death in the past, and we all believe that if that war had not happened, the sovereign would have definitely surpassed this realm and stepped into a mysterious peak. At the instant the Duke of Crimson Flame mentioned the sovereign of the fifth true world, a zealous look appeared in his eyes. Cultivation is all about killing, seizing, and seizing. Su Ming remained silent for a moment. When he spoke slowly, the banging sounds in his body became even stronger, and he slowly stood up. At the instant he did so, a powerful presence erupted from his body. That presence turned into a vortex that swept through the area with Su Ming as its center. The bald crane, who had been sleeping soundly by the side, shuddered and opened its eyes at that moment. Once it saw the vortex around Su Ming, it yawned, mumbled a few words under its breath, and went back to sleep. Since you've told me so much, then you must have a way for me to absorb enough power of world planes in the barren lands of divine essence. Tell me. I'll agree to your deal. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath, lifted his right hand, and clenched it slowly to sense the power coming from his palm. 40 years ago, his physical body had already reached a state where he could fight against those in the initial stage of Heaven Cultivation Realm. 40 years later, his physical body might not have reached the peak of Heaven Cultivation Realm, but it was not far from it. You're an Abyss Builder, but in my memories, the Abyss Builder's way of training is different from yours. You walk down the wrong path. First of all, this physical body is not your real body. The real body of an Abyss Builder is incredibly important. It is their foundation. Your real body. The Duke of Crimson Flame hesitated for a moment before he looked at Su Ming. My real body was sealed by someone. I don't have enough power to retrieve it as of now, Su Ming said flatly. Sealed? In that case, it can also be understood as being absolutely safe. The seal represents that it is unable or unwilling to be destroyed. Since that is the case, it is relatively safe. There is no need to worry too much about it. The Marquis of Crimson Fire's train of thought was very peculiar. Let's not talk about your true body for now. Abyss Builders are skilled in creating clones. The method they use to repair their flaws is simple and direct. They use their true bodies to cultivate their souls, and their clones to cultivate their bodies. They cultivate their laws and their inborn talents. They can possess clones of whatever they lack. Right now, your body has a trace of the power of dispersal and annihilation laws. Only the Steel Tribe and the Crimson Python Phoenix have this kind of power. Judging from your aura, you should have possessed the Crimson Python Phoenix's body and formed a clone. You practice the Surging Indulger's divine abilities, but I have 2 questions. You must answer them first. A glint appeared in the Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes. He looked at Su Ming and asked the question he had been wondering about for a long time. 1. How did you learn the Surging Indulger's body refinement art? 2. Besides the Abyss Builder's presence, I can also sense a hint of Heaven Phantom's presence in your soul. Heaven Phantoms are one of the 4 overlords of the 5th true world. They left a seal on your soul. The Duke of Crimson Flame said languidly, his eyes shining brightly. I came from a place called Death region. There's a group of broken races there, and I obtained the Surging Indulger's cultivation method there. Similarly, I appeared in the barren lands of divine essence because I was forcefully sent here by an ancient existence in Death region. Their goal was to make me search for their king. As for the seal you spoke of, it does indeed exist, Su Ming said calmly. The Duke of Crimson Flame frowned, as if he was thinking about something. After a long while, the frown between his brows deepened. If I was at the peak of my power, I would have been able to help you break your seal, but now I am powerless to do so. However, I've taken a closer look at the seal, and it won't bring you much harm. In fact, it will bring you some benefits. Let's not talk about this. I do indeed have a way for you to obtain the power of world planes in this galaxy, but it is only limited to your physical body. However, this method will make this physical body of yours unable to execute any divine abilities you cultivate. You will only be able to purely practice the power of Qi. That is why you will need to possess another clone for your cultivation. If you agree to it, I will teach you the great art of world-devouring shadows covering space. If you practice this art, you will be able to devour all the people and things that contain the power of world planes. You will be able to devour the power of world planes from the bodies of world paragons, and you will be able to forcefully devour the essence of a world from all manner of living things in the world, even cultivation planets, or even worlds. This art will allow you to become stronger for a short period of time and give you an incredibly powerful physical body. It is the strongest art of the surging indulgers, but if you practice this art, you will need to go through 9 disasters as punishment. If you pass them, you will become stronger, and if you fail, you will die. However, you are a clone. Even if you die, it will be fine. It will not affect your true soul, the Duke of Crimson Flame said in a low voice. Su Ming remained silent for a moment, then looked at the Duke of Crimson Flame and nodded. At the instant Su Ming nodded, the Duke of Crimson Flame lifted his right hand and pointed at him through the air. Immediately, a vortex appeared at the center of Su Ming's brows. A cultivation method that caused Su Ming's heart to tremble immediately appeared in his mind as the vortex rotated. After some time, when the vortex at the center of Su Ming's brows disappeared, a brilliant light shone in his eyes. He clenched his right hand, and a faint vortex appeared on his palm. The Crimson Python Phoenix's scattered power, the art of exploding indulgers, and the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. If this clone of yours can withstand a few disasters and master these arts, then its strength in the future will be limitless. The Duke of Crimson Flame sucked in a deep breath, and anticipation appeared in his eyes. But before you start practicing this art, you must choose another clone as soon as possible. You must be careful when you choose your clone. I suggest that you choose one of the sealed ferocious spirits. Not only do they have inborn arts, their blood has also fused together with the laws in it. By doing so, you will be able to absorb the power of world planes much faster. Su Ming nodded. A glint appeared in his eyes, and he spread his divine sense outwards. As it enveloped the area, he suddenly frowned. He remembered that before he isolated himself, Long Li, Sun Kuan, and Jing Nanzi had left behind their storage bags after they died. In fact, Jing Nanzi's spear had become an ownerless item. Before Tian Lin chose to self-destruct, he had mentioned that if he managed to gather up the growth armor, then Su Ming could take it away. Su Ming had not immediately taken these spoils of war away because he had absorbed the power of flesh and blood in the past. However, the Duke of Crimson Flame had shifted the entire sealed region, so these items should naturally still be around. However, when Su Ming scanned them with his divine sense, he did not discover anything. He fell into a moment of pensive silence, then remembered the Duke of Crimson Flame's pause when he mentioned Jing Nanzi's storage bag, and the look in his eyes, and he came to an understanding. Without batting an eyelid, he cast a glance at the sleeping bald crane not too far in the distance. As if it had noticed Su Ming's gaze, it did not know whether it was a coincidence, but the bald crane turned around and revealed its but to Su Ming before it continued snoring. Su Ming lifted his right hand and flipped it over. Immediately, a crystal appeared in his hand, and he tossed it on the ground. The crystal landed on the solidified purplish-black magma and let out a rather clear sound. Almost at the instant that sound rang out, the bald crane was no longer in its original spot. Instead, it appeared under Su Ming's feet and seized the crystal with its claws. Its eyes shone, and delight appeared on its face. I picked up a crystal. Give me Long Li and the other storage bags. Su Ming said in a low voice while looking at the bald crane. What? What did you say? I don't have anything. I don't have anything. The bald crane blinked, looking at Su Ming with a puzzled expression. With a calm expression, Su Ming cast a glance at the bald crane and said flatly, "The crystals in the storage bags belong to you, and the items in them belong to me." The bald crane was momentarily stunned before it scratched its bald head, as if it had just registered the meaning behind Su Ming's words. It immediately put on an enraged look, and there was even a look of indignation on its face. I didn't take those storage bags. There's someone else here. Perhaps he was the one who took them. I didn't take them. I didn't take them." The bald crane flapped its wings and turned its head around to glare at the Duke of Crimson Flame, looking as if it was absolutely certain that the Duke of Crimson Flame was the one who had taken the storage bags. The Duke of Crimson Flame frowned, but smiled wryly and did not explain anything. Long Li's World Stone, Jing Nanzi's enchanted treasure and his World Stone, and Tian Lin's growth armor. These 4 items are enough for me. The rest are yours, Su Ming said with a frown. However, the bald crane still looked as if it had been wronged to the extreme, as if Su Ming's words were a great humiliation to it. In its exasperation, it flapped its wings continuously, and its body even turned red from agitation. Su Ming cast a profound look at the bald crane, then brought out the gourd from his bosom at a moderate pace. Once he stroked it with his left hand, waves of green light immediately spread out from the gourd. The bald crane immediately widened its eyes, and terror appeared on its face. With a whoosh, it swiftly retreated and even instinctively turned into a large mutt. This was clearly the form it believed to be the strongest in its mind. "Hand it over," Su Ming said flatly. "But I really didn't take them." The bald crane looked as if it was about to cry. Su Ming cast the bald crane another glance. This time, when he lifted his left hand, a few soft feathers appeared on his palm. Those feathers were incredibly soft. When they appeared on Su Ming's hand, the bald crane was momentarily stunned. It thought that those feathers were slightly familiar, but before it could remember what it was, it saw Su Ming using those feathers to tie grass knots. When the Duke of Crimson Flame saw this, the bald crane shuddered violently. It knew exactly what Su Ming was doing at that moment, and it also remembered just who those feathers belonged to. When it thought of the consequences, the bald crane immediately forced out a smile. As it shuddered, it quickly grabbed a few things on its body, then threw out a long crimson spear, 2 world stones that exuded the power to capture divinities, and even a green seed the size of a fist. "Hey, young Master Su, don't be angry. Hurry up and put down those feathers. Stop poking me. I was just joking with you. Take them all. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 877. The green seed was the growth armor that was formed after Tian Lin self-destructed. It was also one of the reasons why Jing Nanzi had spared his life in the past. That growth armor was the size of a fist, and there was a faint stench of blood spreading out from it. There were also quite a number of indistinct Venus pathways shining brightly and dimly on it. With the growth armor in hand, Su Ming sent his divine sense into it. After some time, the growth armor in his hand suddenly shone with a brilliant light. Once it illuminated the entire area, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He took a step back and threw the growth armor in his hand to the ground. Boom! The earth trembled as if the mountains were swaying, causing the meteors in the area to tremble as well. A large tree that was so big that several people could wrap their arms around it appeared before Su Ming. A large number of tree roots spread out and swiftly crawled into the ground, as if they were taking root. At the same time, countless branches grew densely, and in the blink of an eye, they turned into a tree that was 100-something feet tall. By the side, the Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes sparkled. He cast a few scrutinizing glances at the tree, but he did not speak. The bald crane's eyes went wide, and it suddenly felt incredibly regretful. It did not expect that this thing that was not tasty after it took a bite out of it would turn into a big tree. Su Ming lifted his right hand and pressed it against the tree's trunk. At the instant his right hand touched it, his divine sense and Atman became several times stronger with a bang, as if he had fused with the tree. Because of that, the tree's divine sense had become Su Ming's senses. Su Ming saw the meteors and the dark galaxy beyond them. It was a boundless galaxy, and there would occasionally be short bursts of light, along with an almost eternal stillness. After some time, when Su Ming retracted his divine sense, he looked at the tree before him and let out a deep breath. It can allow my divine sense and Atman to cover an incredibly large area for a short period of time. If I use this item well, it will have amazing effects. And since Jingnan Zi placed such a high value on this growth armor that Tian Lin had to pay with his life, it should have even more effects. When Su Ming lifted his right hand, the tree rapidly withered. In the blink of an eye, it turned back into a seed the size of a fist, but its color had become slightly duller. Once Su Ming put away the growth armor, his gaze fell on the two world stones filled with the power of soul catchers. As he looked at them, he could sense the power of world planes contained within them. Once you become a world paragon, you'll need to absorb the essence of 10,000 worlds to slowly increase your level of cultivation. If you want to move about in a world that is not acknowledged by the essence of a world, then you will need to use world stones that were created in your own world to replenish the power of your world planes. This means that this item is not rare in the world outside, but in the barren lands of divine essence. It is a supreme treasure that will make all the world paragons who have committed crimes go mad. Su Ming touched the surface of the world stone and sensed a prickling sensation on his hand, but he did not feel any pain. It was as if the item he was touching was filled with a sharp, prickling sensation. It's a pity to use it to execute the swallowing hollow shadow technique. Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he put away the two world stones into his storage bag. This sort of item was incredibly rare in the barren lands of divine essence, and it would be of great use to him. Once he finished doing all this, a nostalgic look appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand and seized the air. Immediately, the long red spear that Jingnan Zi had left behind after his death flew towards him, and Su Ming grabbed it. "I once had a long spear like this," Su Ming mumbled. He remembered the Undertaker of Evil Spear. It might have been an imitation of the first god of berserkers, and the real Undertaker of Evil Spear was in the depths of Great Yu's palace. But the imitation had been with Su Ming for a long time. He had even used it to fight in all directions and gathered countless war souls to refine it. It was a pity that in the end, it had exploded and turned into ashes. The long red spear hummed in Su Ming's hand. A thick, bloody stench spread out from it, as if it was unwilling to be held by Su Ming. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he pushed forward with his right hand and clenched his fist tightly. The vast power of qi in his body instantly erupted from his body and covered the long spear through his hands. "Even if you don't accept me, you will still have to be used by me," Su Ming said flatly. He did not bother about the will in the long spear. He held the spear in his right hand and swung it forward. Immediately, piercing whistles rang out around him. Shadows of the long spear appeared all around him, and there were thousands of them, causing people to be unable to tell whether they were real or fake. Su Ming's right hand eventually stopped in front of him. The tip of the spear let out a bang, and at the same time it stabbed into the ground, a strange light shone in his eyes. This isn't just a long spear. Su Ming let go of his right hand, but he lifted his finger and flicked the spear that had stabbed into the ground. At the instant, a clear sound reverberated in the air. The spear immediately broke down before Su Ming as it shuddered, turning into an endless amount of red water that covered his fingertip. In the blink of an eye, it covered his right arm and turned into a vambrace. There was a strange light flowing around the red vambrace, and there was a word formed by countless tiny runic symbols carved on the outer part of his shoulder. Guard. That word was guard. The Duke of Crimson Flame had been watching Su Ming's actions all this while. We saw the vambrace on his right arm. A glint appeared in his eyes. As for the bald crane, it had a distressed expression on its face at that moment. Its heart was filled with regret. The more it saw just how extraordinary the long spear was, the more pain it felt in its heart. He's a bully. He snatched away the gourd, the seed, the two pretty stones, and even such a domineering long spear couldn't escape from his hands. Damn it, I'll endure this. I'll endure it. I'll endure it. The bald crane gritted its teeth, feeling as if its flesh was being cut off while it was still alive. You've already formed your foundation. I suggest that you go to other cultivation planets and look around. Perhaps you'll find a clone that's suitable for you. Also, you have to be careful of the true guards from the four great true worlds. A short 100 years isn't enough for them to forget what happened in Crimson Flame Planet. We left in time in the past, but we were also cut off from the outside world. I wonder what sort of effect the matter in Crimson Flame Planet brought to us, the bald Duke of Crimson Flame said in a low voice. Once he cast Su Ming a glance, he closed his eyes and began meditating. He had already made it clear that he would stay by Su Ming's side to protect him. No matter where Su Ming chose to go, he would follow him. With a single move, Su Ming disappeared from the sealed region. When he reappeared, he was already standing on the meteor. What he saw was a dark galaxy, and the darkness in it looked real to Su Ming. This was the first time he was in a real galaxy. The few times he had gone into mental wanderings in Yin Death region in the past was nothing compared to this. Su Ming liked this sort of darkness and this sort of realism. After watching it for some time, he sat down quietly on the meteor's surface, lifted his right hand, and struck the meteor that was nearly 10,000 lis big beneath him. Buzz! As the meteor trembled, it became out of sync with the other meteors around it. Gradually, it changed its trajectory, and after a moment, with a loud whoosh, it broke away from the meteor's trajectory and flew towards the dark galaxy in the distance by itself. Su Ming had no goal and no place he had to go to. He sat on the meteor and simply allowed it to charge forward. At that moment, Su Ming's gray hair spilled over his shoulders. He was dressed in a white long robe that hid the stars in it, and he also had the True Guard's vambrace on his right arm. His expression was aloof, and his eyes were cold. He looked at the galaxy quietly and simply allowed time to pass. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The lone meteor charged forward in the galaxy, turning into a long arc that traveled in a straight line in the vast galaxy. Su Ming seemed to have forgotten about the flow of time as he stood on the meteor. When the meteor flew for 7 years, a broken ship appeared in front of it. That ship had sails, and it looked as if the galaxy was an ocean. There were dozens of thin cultivators on it, and they were using their power to maintain the ship's flight. Most of these thin cultivators were in Earth Cultivation Realm. Only 2 of them were in Heaven Cultivation Realm. They sat at the bow of the ship, as if they were controlling the direction of the ship. Behind the 2 of them was a large bed. On the bed lay an extremely fat man. The fat man's eyes were narrowed, and in his arms was a short, skinny, and somewhat good-looking female cultivator, who looked gaunt and sallow. The broken ship, drifting in the galaxy, was facing the meteor on which Su Ming was, and they were getting closer to each other. This attracted the ship's attention, especially the 2 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm. They stood up cautiously and looked into the distance. With just one glance, they saw Su Ming sitting on the meteor. He was dressed in white and had a head full of gray hair, and he was incredibly eye-catching in the crowd's eyes. Besides, Su Ming had his eyes closed and was meditating. The ripples of power spreading out from him made him seem as if he was in Earth Cultivation Realm. Because of that, it was inevitable that he gave off a strange feeling. There's something off about this person. Don't bother with him. It's more important for us to hurry. This time, Western Ring Nebula's great paragon 10,000 years is about to give birth to a child. We can't be late. When the 2 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm looked over cautiously, a piercing voice came from behind them. That voice had come from the plump man on the bed. The plump man narrowed his eyes and cast a glance at Su Ming from the distance. Soon, the meteor and the ship got closer. As the ripples they stirred up crashed into each other, they were about to charge past each other. Su Ming continued sitting with his eyes closed, ignoring what was happening around him. Yet at the instant the meteor and the ship passed by each other, two piercing rays of red light suddenly spread out from the chests of the two cultivators in heaven cultivation realm on the ship. At the same time, red light also spread out from the plum man's robes. The appearance of these three rays of red light was incredibly sudden, causing the three people to be stunned. The plump man's expression suddenly changed drastically. He immediately brought out the item shining with red light from his bosom. It was a pearl the size of a baby's fist. At that moment, the light from that pearl was as red as blood. It was a terrifying sight to behold, and, at the same time, the plump man looked towards Su Ming, who was still sitting on the meteor that was not too far away. This blood identification pearl that was given to everyone by the true guards in most of the barren lands of divine essence 100 years ago. It actually lit up? Could it be? Could it be him? The plump man stood up swiftly, and great excitement appeared in his eyes. He is indeed in Earth cultivation realm. Stop him. We can't let him escape. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 878. Haha, the barren lands of divine essence are huge, but I, Shantai, managed to run into this person. This is my luck, this is my chance, this is my serendipity, this is my eternal serendipity. The four great true worlds have offered a reward. If anyone can kill the person whose blood identification pearl has lit up and have their soul absorbed into the pearl, the four great true worlds will promise to use a world stone containing the power of world planes in exchange. The plump man shuddered. In the midst of his excitement, he roared, and the ship beneath him changed its direction with a bang to charge towards the meteor where Su Ming was. At the same time, excitement also appeared on the faces of the two cultivators in heaven cultivation realm on the ship. With Shantai around, even though it would be difficult for them to obtain the world stone, even if they killed their enemy, they would still receive plenty of other rewards. It was especially so for the person wanted by the four great true worlds. He was truly only in Earth cultivation realm, and it was impossible for him to have hidden or sealed his cultivation base, because the four great true worlds had clearly stated that this person was only in Earth cultivation realm. Whoosh! The two of them charged forward, and their speed increased exponentially. In the blink of an eye, they closed in on the meteor where Su Ming was and turned into two long arcs. As their power erupted from their bodies in heaven cultivation realm, they formed a powerful pressure that charged towards Su Ming. Dai, I like to see just what sort of abilities does a person who is wanted by the four great true worlds have. Su Ming opened his eyes slowly and cast a cold glance at the people charging towards him from his left and right. At the instant he looked over, he swung his arm. A shrill scream of pain came from his right. When the cultivator in heaven cultivation realm to his right was less than 300 feet away from Su Ming, a black dot immediately appeared at the center of his brows. That black dot looked as if it had been stung by something. He could not even see what it was clearly, but an intense pain spread through his entire body. His screams of pain were still echoing in the air, but his body had already melted and turned into a puddle of blood that spilled on the meteor. You're just asking for death. Su Ming stood up. The cultivator in heaven cultivation realm to his left had his expression change drastically at that moment. Disbelief and shock appeared in his eyes. Everything had happened too quickly just now. He had not seen anything at all. The only thing he saw was his companion suddenly screaming in pain before his body turned into a puddle of blood and died in the blink of an eye. This scene immediately caused the cultivator in heaven cultivation realm to shudder. He immediately retreated without any hesitation, and his heart was instantly filled with fear. He suddenly remembered a terrifying question. Just why was this person wanted by the four great true worlds? The four great true worlds did not state the reason for the arrest. They only listed this person as wanted, but there was no way that a person who was listed as wanted by the four great true worlds would be a weakling. This cultivator's face was ghastly pale, but before he could even retreat 100 feet, an afterimage appeared before him. He could clearly see that afterimage. It was a poisonous wasp. This was the final scene the cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm saw clearly in his life. It was also his final memory. Heaven and cultivation, the other and cultivators, Tao and cultivators. And Tao and cultivation, Tao and Tao had and took. Sir, why did you stop me for no reason? Su Ming asked flatly. His gaze was calm as he looked at the plump man, who was hesitating whether to advance or retreat. When Su Ming spoke, the meteor under him even froze for a moment, then gradually stopped moving into the distance. Instead, it floated in the galaxy, facing the plump man's ship from a distance. Ha, it's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. I mistook you for someone else. It's all my fault. Please don't blame me. I'll leave right away. The fat man squinted his eyes and squeezed out a kind smile. He slowly retreated. He could not quite figure out the strength of the wanted person before him. He might have seemed like someone in Earth Cultivation Realm, but killing 2 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm was as easy as breathing. This scene was enough to shock him and make him regard him seriously. Compared to the World Stone, his life was more important. Besides, to him, if he wanted to kill this person, then perhaps he should find a few more companions with him. Only then would he have the confidence to do so. As he laughed, the plump Shantai immediately retreated. Just as he was about to leave, Su Ming let out a cold harumph. He looked like he was still sitting cross-legged on the meteor, but in the blink of an eye, he appeared right before Shantai. Only when he appeared did the figure on the meteor slowly disappear. It was just an afterimage. Since you've already attacked, then don't be in such a hurry to leave. Su Ming took a step forward. The instant he closed in on Shantai, he lifted his right hand, clenched it into a fist, and hurled it forward. He did not use the gourd or the long spear. Neither did he use the poisonous wasp or any other divine abilities. He only used the power of his physical body and chi. It was rare for him to run into a powerful warrior in the initial stage of World Plane Realm, and Su Ming wanted to see just how strong his physical body was and his current combat abilities were. You're asking for death. All the fat on Shantai's body shuddered, and a fierce glare appeared in his eyes. When he saw that Su Ming had truly dared to attack him, his heart immediately let out a thump against his chest. However, no matter how he looked at it, this person was still in Earth Cultivation Realm. This caused him to let out a low growl and form a seal with his hands before he swung them forward. The space before him was torn apart, and a huge net manifested before it charged towards Su Ming to envelop him. Boom! 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 Su Ming took a huge step forward, and with each step he took, he hurled a punch forward. The net exploded after withstanding 3 punches, and the torrent that was formed tumbled outwards. Shantai's expression changed. With a loud roar, all the fat on his body shuddered, and he curled up. As he mumbled rapidly, a dazzling, oily light erupted from his body, and he turned into a gigantic ball of flesh that charged towards Su Ming. You want to compete with me in terms of physical strength? You're just an Earth Cultivation Realm. I originally wanted to let you go, but since you're asking for death, then die. Noisy. Su Ming took a step forward and threw another punch forward. Bang! 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 The two of them exchanged nearly 100 punches within an incredibly short amount of time. Shantai's body continued becoming thinner, and eventually, with a bang, both of them fell back. A focused glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he sighed in his heart. His physical strength was only at the peak of Heaven Cultivation Realm. He had yet to reach the full power of a divine ability that was equivalent to that of a Lord of World Planes. He could not kill a World Paragon, and it would be difficult for him to suppress them. However, if Shantai did not use the power of World Planes, it would also be difficult for him to injure Su Ming. After all, even if they were World Paragons, most of them practiced arts. There were very few who purely trained their physical bodies. As Su Ming sighed in his heart, Shantai looked as if he had just seen a malicious spirit. He was incredibly shocked in his heart, and there was also a faint feeling of astonishment. He knew clearly that even if he did not use the power of World Planes, The near 100 punches just now were enough to kill all cultivators below the level of world paragons. In fact, even if he faced world paragons who were at the same level as him, he would still have a great advantage in terms of physical strength. However, after throwing nearly 100 punches, Shantai was practically unharmed. Instead, he was the one who was shaken to the point that his body was in pain, and even his mind was slightly distracted. As expected of the person who is wanted by the four great true worlds keeping a lookout over this place. But since you dare stand before me, then I will let you know just what is the difference between a lord of world planes and the three cultivators of heaven, earth, and man. Even if I have to use the power of world planes to kill you, the price is worth it. A murderous look appeared in Shantai's eyes. He was clearly in the galaxy, but he opened his mouth and sucked in a deep breath of an unknown air. Boom! Shantai's hair fluttered rapidly, and his body withered rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a tall and thin person. Ripples spread out violently from his body, and at the same time, a great presence erupted from his body. A wave of power from world planes forced its way into his body and spread out along with his presence. This was the true power of a lord of world planes. Only a lord of world planes who used the power of world planes could be known as a world paragon. The galaxy around them looked as if it had turned into an ocean at that moment. As layers of ripples tumbled about, the power of world planes swept through the area. A focused glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he retreated as those ripples spread out. Do you want me to attack? The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice reached his ears. If you execute the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole at full power, can you kill this person? Su Ming asked while staring at Shantai. It depends on how much you can understand. If you understand 3/10 of it, you can injure him. If you understand 6/10, you can injure him. If you understand 8/10, you can kill him. When Su Ming heard the words by his ears, a glint appeared in his eyes. With one move, I will take your life. Shantai's voice was ghastly. He lifted his right hand, formed a seal, and pointed forward. Immediately, the power of world planes surrounding him surged forth with a bang and gathered into a transparent board of light before him. As it shone, a dozen something of these boards of light appeared in various spots around Su Ming. World plane slaughter. Shantai swung his arm, and the dozen something boards of light formed by the power of world planes charged towards Su Ming with a bang. Before they even closed in, Su Ming could already sense a mighty pressure that was incredibly difficult for him to fight against. Art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. Su Ming closed his eyes swiftly. He lifted his hands and struck his body a few times. His right arm withered away, and soon after, his left arm also withered away. His legs, his torso, and his head all turned into dried-up corpses. Only Su Ming's eyes shone with a dark light at that instant. That dark light flashed several times in his eyes, and at the instant the boards of light around him pressed down on him, Su Ming's body let out a bang, and like a person in a mirror, he shattered into countless shards as the mirror shattered. Those shards charged forward with a bang. Boom, boom, boom. The instant the boards of light touched those shards, they shattered. Once the power of world planes within them was absorbed, they appeared before Shantai at an indescribable speed and pierced into his body. In the blink of an eye, all the shards pierced into Shantai's body. When they did so, they melted, and an incredibly shrill scream of pain tumbled out of Shantai's mouth. His memories were being swiftly devoured. His flesh and blood were swiftly disappearing, and the power of world planes in his body was completely sucked away in the blink of an eye. Boom! Shantai's body crumbled. At the same time, an endless amount of shards flew out of his body and gathered together in the galaxy. They were like a shattered mirror that was fusing back together, and at the instant they were whole, they turned into Su Ming's body. His body was originally withered, but at that moment, it rapidly swelled up. In the blink of an eye, it returned to normal, and a wisp of the presence of world planes spread out from his body. What a powerful art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. Su Ming closed his eyes and sensed the vast amount of qi in his body. It was a feeling that was clearly stronger than what he had felt before, and it made him obsessed. Recommendation votes. Remember to vote for me to be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 879. Not too far away was the broken ship belonging to Shantai. The dozen-something cultivators in cultivation realm were all pale as they watched the scene just now with a dumbfounded expression on their faces. They had personally witnessed Shantai's death, the bizarre way he died, and Su Ming, who had his eyes closed at that moment, became the most terrifying existence in their eyes. They did not dare move, neither did they dare run. Fate had already left them at that moment, and it was no longer in their control. After a long while, Su Ming opened his eyes, and a brilliant light shone briefly in them. I obtained this person's memories. Shantai. Su Ming fell into a moment of pensive silence, then lifted his right hand and seized the air. Immediately, a storage bag flew out from beneath him. He swept his hand past it and brought out a blood-red pearl. That pearl shone with a piercing red light between Su Ming's fingers, as if it was telling all those who could see it that Su Ming was the person wanted by the four great true worlds. The four great true worlds placed a bounty on my head, but they didn't say why they wanted me. They used world stones as a reward, regardless of whether I lived or died. Su Ming frowned and cast a glance at the meteor. Immediately, two rays of red light flew out from the meteor and floated before Su Ming. They were also two red pearls, and they belonged to the two cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm who had died. Blood Identification Pearl. In Shantai's memories, almost all the cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm and World Paragons in most of the barren lands of Divine Essence were given these pearls by the True Guards over the past 100 years. They can use these pearls to discover me. By the looks of it, the four great true worlds have already set up an inescapable net in the barren lands of Divine Essence to search for me. The moment I show myself, I'll immediately be discovered, even if I've changed my appearance. Su Ming lowered his head and looked at the pearl in his hand. A freezing glare and killing intent filled his eyes. How did the four great true worlds create this pearl? How could it be able to locate me? But I expected them to place a bounty on me. After all, the change in Crimson Flame Planet is enough to catch their attention. A cold sneer appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. I might be able to let you know how they managed to locate you. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice reached Su Ming's ears. The Duke of Crimson Flame appeared on the meteor in the distance and walked towards him with one step. The Marquis of Scarlet Fire, who was bald, was extremely burly. The large robe on his body caused him to possess an extremely strange aura. The totem on his bald head, in particular, caused the Marquis of Scarlet Fire to feel awe-inspiring without being angry. He stood beside Su Ming and lifted his right hand to pick up a blood pearl. A dark light appeared in his eyes, and with a light squeeze, the blood pearl immediately shattered. The moment it shattered, a mist of blood appeared. A few blurry pictures gradually appeared in the blood mist. Those pictures flashed rapidly and were reflected in Su Ming's eyes. The first picture was of a gigantic pit on the ground of Crimson Flame Planet, and it was filled with blood. In the second picture was an old man dressed in a long gray robe. There was the mark of a crescent moon at the center of his brows, as if he had a third eye. There were dozens of people exuding the presence of world planes standing behind him, and behind them was an army of tens of thousands that connected the sky and earth. An old woman knelt in front of him. That old woman was Meilon. In the third picture, the old man in gray robes stood on a mountain. That mountain was the ninth summit Su Ming had created. Wind, sand, and stones moved about on it, as if time was flowing in reverse. There were also countless shadows flashing about. Eventually, one of them became clear, and it turned into Su Ming sitting at the top of the mountain. In the fourth picture, the old man pressed his right hand on Mei Lan's head. The air behind Mei Lan distorted, and gradually, Su Ming's face appeared in those distortions. The four pictures disappeared in the blink of an eye. The blood mist before Su Ming became thinner, and in the end, it faded away. They used other people's memories to search for your appearance, then used the memories of the earth, mountains, and rivers to determine your presence. Once they gathered together, they would be able to locate you. They also used a special method to gather blood and fused it with your presence and appearance to create this pearl. As long as you are within its sensing area, then no matter how you change, it will be able to detect you. This is the method of those in lunar Culpa realm. The change in Crimson Flame Planet has stirred up those in lunar Culpa realm to attack. This matter will definitely be incredibly shocking to the four great true worlds. Haha, what they're shocked about isn't me escaping the seal, but how I escaped. It's especially so since you broke the seal on the ferocious beasts in Crimson Flame Planet. Because of that, they will naturally pay more attention to you. They're not afraid of me, but of you breaking the seal on another cultivation planet. I moved the sealed region and left in the past, and you hid for 100 years, not coming out. That's why they never managed to find any clues about you. But since you've appeared now, then with my understanding towards those in Lunar Culpa realm, this pearl is definitely not as simple as it looks for clues. If my guess is correct, the galaxy where the four great true worlds keep a lookout over the barren lands has already noticed your appearance, and I believe that all the cultivators who have this pearl in the area have already noticed your location. The Duke of Crimson Flame said in a low voice. Su Ming stared at the pearl in his hand. After a moment of silence, killing intent filled his eyes, and he let out a cold bark of laughter. Don't place your hopes on luck. The four great true worlds don't care whether you live or die. They only want one result. Even if it's your corpse, they will still have a way to learn of your origins. The Duke of Crimson Flame said languidly. If you want to kill me, then you will have to pay a price. Su Ming turned around and moved. The armor on his right arm instantly melted and covered his entire body. At the same time, the bald crane flew out from the meteor. Clearly, it had received Su Ming's summons. Once it flew over, it crawled into a storage bag. At that moment, Su Ming's entire body was filled with crimson flowing light. Gradually, it turned into a red coffin. There were a large amount of runic symbols shining on the coffin, and it exuded an ancient presence. Let's go. Su Ming's voice came from the coffin. The Duke of Crimson Flame took a step forward and instantly disappeared, turning into a totem on his head that branded itself on the coffin. It instantly filled the red coffin with a bizarre air. With a whoosh, the coffin changed its direction and charged towards the galaxy in the distance. Su Ming, I'll control the direction. We'll head towards the depths of the barren lands of divine essence. There are plenty of primitive cultivation planets there, and there are also living beings that you can obtain to turn into your clone. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in the air before gradually fading away. Once the dozen-something people on the ship Shan Tai left behind after his death saw Su Ming leaving into the distance, they immediately let out a huge sigh of relief. Their hearts trembled, and they felt as if they had just survived a disaster. Just as they were about to carefully control the ship to leave, a powerful presence suddenly descended from a galaxy. Rip! A crack was torn open in the galaxy, and a person instantly walked out from within. That person was dressed like a savage. His hair was very long, and his clothes were in rags. However, there was an incredibly powerful presence coming from his body. This is the place. The person wanted by the four great true worlds keeping a lookout over this place ran pretty quickly. There was a blood-red pearl in the man's hand, and that pearl was shining with a brilliant light. At the same time, the instant Su Ming's presence appeared in a circular area of a small part of the galaxy where he and Shan Tai were fighting all the cultivators who were in Heaven Cultivation Realm and above, regardless of what they were doing in the galaxy or on the cultivation planets, as long as they were in Heaven Cultivation Realm or above for the first time in their lives. The blood spheres that were given to them by the four great true worlds over the past 100 years shone, with a dazzling blood-red light. At the same time, a clear will spread out from each of the pearls. That was like a guide that could allow the people holding the blood pearls to sense where Su Ming was. Kill this person, take his soul into the blood pearl, and you will be rewarded with 3 world stones. There are also these ancient words in that consciousness. Through the blood beads, it could be said that these words echoed in the ears of all the cultivators who held the blood beads in their hands in half of the planetary system at the same time. The reward 100 years ago was 1 world stone, and now there are 3. This person can be killed. 3 world stones is enough for me to execute the power of world planes a few times, and I won't have to worry about recovering either. This is a good deal. It might not be rare for someone to be wanted by the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over this place, but it only happens once every 10,000 years. I should join in on the fun. Due to the will from the blood pearls, many cultivation planets started boiling. Long arcs charged out and flew out of their cultivation planets, charging towards the direction they sensed. At the same time, within the galaxy belonging to the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands of divine essence, one of the 19 radix planets floating in the galaxy shone with a brilliant light. That light shone and shone in all directions. Waves of ripples spread out from it, causing all the people from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over this place to sense it. Want a man with 4 stars. He is the cause of the change in Crimson Flame Planet. He is suspected to be a member of the alien race. He is suspected to possess the power to break seals. He has appeared in the southeastern region of Western Ring Nebula. Capture this sort of wanted person alive. If you can't capture him alive, then kill him. An aloof and merciless voice echoed in the galaxy where the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds were keeping a lookout over this place. After a moment, a layer of ripples sliced through the galaxy, and an ancient bronze longsword that was 100,000 feet long manifested. There were thousands of armored warriors standing on it, and there were 3 people sitting cross-legged at the tip of the sword, meditating. As the ancient bronze longsword left into the distance, 7 other ancient bronze swords appeared indistinctly in the galaxy. As they charged forward, they charged towards the barren lands where Su Ming's presence had come from. Long arcs filled the entire Western Ring Nebula at that moment. As they charged forward, all of them charged towards the same direction at full speed. There were also numerous enchanted vessels filling the area, and all of them were heading towards the same spot from different directions. The red coffin, where Su Ming was charged forward in the galaxy. The runic symbols on the coffin shone, and a freezing, killing intent slowly spread out from it to surround the area. Su Ming, there are 6 presences of world paragons around us, and 30-something presences in heaven cultivation realm chasing after us. These people are the closest to us. There are more behind us. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice traveled into Su Ming's mind. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he asked coldly, "How far is the nearest cultivation planet?" The nearest cultivation planet is about 6 hours away from you. If you like this work, please come to Start Point and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 880. Heavenly Treasure Planet was a dull cultivation planet located in the southeastern region of Western Ring Nebula in the barren lands of divine essence. Perhaps it had been glorious in the past. Perhaps it had a brilliant past. But now, it was just an abandoned planet. Its surface was filled with bumps, deep pits, and desolate mountains. When people looked at the planet from outer space, they would feel as if all things in the world had died. It was not circular. Half of it had been split into countless shattered stones, and it was in the midst of crumbling. This crumbling had lasted for countless years, and it was still continuing. All the cultivators who were not too far away from the planet could see the shattered stones slowly disintegrating until they became a part of the galaxy. This was a planet that was about to die, but even so, there were still plenty of cultivators living in Heavenly Treasure Planet. Most of these cultivators lived there for generations, and they had already become a part of Heavenly Treasure Planet. Similarly, there were also plenty of places where ferocious beasts and spirits were sealed in Heavenly Treasure Planet. There were also places where alien races were sealed deep within. There was only one continent in all of Heavenly Treasure Planet. There were plenty of scattered islands scattered all over the planet. Aside from that, there was also star-shattering wind ocean, which even a normal Lord of World planes would be slightly wary of. It was an ocean formed by wind that spread to all the places besides the continent and the islands. The sharpness and howls of the wind turned into shrill moans that could easily tear apart the flesh and blood of cultivators in Earth cultivation realm and crush them. This sort of wind was unique to Heavenly Treasure Planet. It formed an ocean and cut off the sky, causing the people in Heavenly Treasure Planet to rarely get close to star-shattering wind ocean. On this day, the sky was dark. The sun and moon could not be seen, but there was a hazy light that enveloped the land. When it was about noon, when the cultivators in Heavenly Treasure Planet were still immersed in their meditation, a roar that sounded like thunder in spring suddenly came from the sky and reverberated in all directions. That roar was not just one. It was continuous, and it was growing stronger with each passing moment, causing people to be unable to not pay attention to it, unable to not listen to it, and unable to not lift their heads. A blood-red meteor was whistling through the sky, heading straight for the ground. One could faintly see that the meteor was actually a gigantic red coffin. The runes on the coffin flashed, and it was clear that it had come from the outer space, passing through the astral wind layer of the planet. Because its speed was too fast, there was friction when it descended, and flames were ignited, causing the red coffin to look frighteningly hot from afar. Who? The red coffin sliced through the space in the world. At the same time, a monstrous, murderous aura spread out from it. It also brought with it flames, speed, and crimson. At the instant it shocked all the cultivators in Heavenly Treasure Planet, it did not descend on the ground, but on the star-shattering wind ocean beyond the continent. What is that thing? It's too fast. It's coming from the void. Could it be some kind of treasure? With shocking speed, and the baleful aura is too dense. Even though I'm far away, just looking at it makes my heart tremble. This is definitely an extremely powerful expert. It's a pity that it descended upon the star-shattering wind ocean. Otherwise, I would definitely go and check it out. The cultivators in Heavenly Treasure Planet started buzzing. The scene just now was something they had rarely seen in their lives, and all of them felt their hearts tremble. Boom! A muffled roar came from star-shattering wind ocean, which sounded like a violent gust of wind sweeping through a continent. As that sound echoed in the air, a wave of air tumbled about. If anyone looked down from the sky at that moment, they would be able to see a ring-shaped ripple sweeping through the area where the red coffin had descended at a certain spot in star-shattering wind ocean beyond the continent. Booming sounds rang out non-stop wherever it went. It was also at that moment that all the cultivators in Heavenly Treasure Planet who had reached Heaven Cultivation Realm and possessed the blood identification pearls given to them by the forces of power from the four great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands, saw the blood-red light shining viciously from the pearls. All of them pointed towards star-shattering wind ocean. It was especially so for the Lords of World planes staying in Heavenly Treasure Planet. Their expressions changed, and they looked in the direction of star-shattering wind ocean. The blood pearls are shining. This is the sign of the person wanted by the four great true worlds appearing. It might be difficult for me to kill this person with the world stone last time with my level of cultivation, but it's not impossible for me to fish in troubled waters. This is a chance that only appears once in thousands of years, and it's now. As the light from the blood pearls shone, all the cultivators in Heavenly Treasure Planet who knew about this became excited. Long arcs shot up from the ground and flew out from all corners of the planet to get closer to the spot where the booming sound from star-shattering wind ocean were coming from. At the center of the ring-shaped ripple that was spreading out in all directions was the ground under the boundless ocean of wind. A small portion of the red coffin had sunk deep into the ground, and the ground was covered in cracks that covered an area of several hundreds of thousands of feet. An endless amount of violent gusts of wind howled violently in the area, and they were like sharp blades that continued slicing at the coffin. The booming sounds seemed to have no end to them. There are 4 world paragons and 17 cultivators in heaven cultivation realm in this planet, along with those who are rushing over from the galaxy. Su Ming, your opponents will increase, and you'll be in a lot of trouble. What do you plan to do? The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice came from the red coffin that was surrounded by an endless amount of wind blades. Kill, Su Ming said flatly. His voice was calm, but the murderous aura contained within that calmness made the Duke of Crimson Flame feel apprehensive in his heart. I will kill until no one dares to chase after me. I will kill until the sky and earth turn dark, and I will kill until blood flows in rivers. I will turn the sky into autumn. This is the beginning of my autumn. When Su Ming said those words, the red coffin started melting right before his eyes. After a moment, Su Ming, dressed in white, walked out of the red coffin. At the instant he walked out, the wind blades around him surrounded him. An endless amount of them crashed into his body with a howl, but the sounds of metal crashing into each other rang in the air. Su Ming took a few steps back, but he was completely unharmed. This place is rather suitable for me to refine my physical body. It's already so powerful at the periphery. If I get closer to the center of the ocean of wind, the wind blades will become even sharper. Su Ming lifted his right hand and pressed it against the red coffin beside him. Immediately, the coffin melted rapidly and turned into a red liquid that covered Su Ming's right hand and turned into a vambrace. The spot where the true guard's name was originally carved on the vambrace was now covered by the Duke of Crimson Flame's totem. When Su Ming lifted his head to look at the sky, the color of his white robes gradually changed. When his robes turned completely red, the gray-haired Su Ming looked to be filled with a heinous, murderous aura. It was also at that moment that long arcs arrived from the direction of the continent. There were 9 of them, and one of them was a world paragon. The others were all in heaven cultivation realm. The reason why they had been able to arrive so quickly was because their cave abodes were nearby, which was why they were able to arrive before the others arrived. The 9 people's cultivation bases erupted from their bodies, and without any hesitation, they stepped out of the edge of the continent and into the territory of star-shattering wind ocean. This place was also the edge of star-shattering wind ocean. Those in earth cultivation realm could not fight against the wind blades in this place, but they could survive for a short period of time. Almost at the instant the 9 people charged over, a dark light shone on the face of the gray-haired Su Ming, who was dressed in red robes. A black mask appeared on his flesh and blood, as if it had grown on his face. Once the mask appeared, not a hint of warmth could be found in Su Ming's body. It was as if he had been frozen for 10,000 years. There was no emotion, no pain, only a cold, murderous air. The color of autumn, Su Ming mumbled faintly. Whoosh! A cultivator at the peak of heaven cultivation realm appeared in the ocean of wind several thousands of feet away from Su Ming. There was a screen of light around his body that blocked the wind blades from crashing into him. When he saw Su Ming, ecstasy instantly appeared in his eyes. I found him. He's here. The cultivator in heaven cultivation realm was a middle-aged man. A glint appeared in his eyes, and as he roared, he did not move forward. Instead, he moved a little backwards. Clearly, he wanted to wait for the others to arrive before he attacked. After all, while this person might seem to be in earth cultivation realm, his actions when he descended to heavenly treasure planet just now had been too shocking. At the same time the middle-aged man was filled with ecstasy, he was also wary. However, when he remembered that there were many of them, his wariness became so faint that it was barely noticeable. Almost at the instant the man in heaven cultivation realm spoke, 3 long arcs charged out from behind him and turned into 3 people. These 3 people were also in heaven cultivation realm. Once they appeared, they immediately saw Su Ming standing in the ocean of wind several thousands of feet away. Behind them was the presence of a Lord of World planes swiftly closing in. By the looks of it, it would arrive in the span of a few breaths. Attack. The 4 of us will attack together. No matter how strong he is, it's impossible for him to instantly kill the four of us. The world paragons will be here soon. The four of them cast each other a glance. Their cultivation bases immediately erupted from their bodies, and they turned into four long arcs that charged towards Su Ming. The distance of several thousands of feet could be covered in the blink of an eye. At the instant the four of them were less than hundreds of feet away from Su Ming, he lifted his head, lifted his right foot, and stomped on the ground. Boom! The area of several hundreds of thousands of feet on the ground had already begun to shatter due to the red coffin's descent. At that moment, when Su Ming stomped on the ground, an area of several hundreds of thousands of feet instantly crumbled, turning into an endless amount of earth and shattered stones that exploded into the sky. Su Ming's body also disappeared without a trace during that instant. That's it. What speed? This is bad. The four people's expressions suddenly changed drastically. The wind blades howled in the air, the earth and shattered stones filled the air, and Su Ming, who had been locked onto by them, instantly disappeared. At the instant, the four people's hearts let out a thump against their chests. Shrill screams of pain reverberated in the air. It was the middle-aged man who had been the first to discover Su Ming. His head and body were separated at that moment. Su Ming swept his right hand horizontally behind him, and with his powerful physical body, he crushed the man's defenses and sliced through his neck like a blade. Blood gushed out. When the expressions of the other three people changed, Su Ming moved coldly and turned into a long arc that crashed into another person. As he closed in, the cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm, who was rammed into by Su Ming, roared furiously. His divine ability turned into a brilliant light on his hands, and he attacked Su Ming without care for anything else. However, his attack could not make Su Ming stop for even a single moment. As their bodies crashed into each other, a bang rang out, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. The remaining two people were shocked. Without any hesitation, they swiftly retreated. At the same time, the presence of a world paragon closed in on them from behind, and a low, dark roar traveled forth. If I kill you, I can get 3 world stones. This deal is worth it. Remember this, the one who killed you is Moong. If you like this work, I welcome you to give me a recommendation vote or a monthly vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 881. At the instant the dark voice spoke, the two cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm let out a huge sigh of relief in their hearts and retreated swiftly. When they looked towards Su Ming, their hearts were already trembling in fear. In just a few short breaths, 2 of the 4 of them had been killed. This scene caused them to be shocked, and at the same time, great fear and wariness towards Su Ming rose within them. What left a deep impression on them was his speed and the strength of his physical body. Boom! As the gloomy voice traveled into the air, the ocean of wind howled, and a tear appeared in that spot. A short old man walked out from that tear. The old man was dressed in a long, navy blue robe. His skin was shriveled, and his pupils were unlike those of a normal person. They were vertical, causing him to look incredibly bizarre and ghastly. At the instant he walked out, he swung his arm forward, and a layer of green fog spread out with a bang. As it charged towards Su Ming, it turned into a gigantic green arm that went to seize him. At the same time, several figures appeared in the ocean of wind around them. There were 4 of them, and there were men and women among them. All of them were in Heaven Cultivation Realm, including the 2 who had died previously and the old man. They were the first batch of local cultivators from Heavenly Treasure Planet who had rushed to this place. This person is wanted by the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds, keeping a lookout over the barren lands. He must have fled all the way here. There must be a lot of people chasing after him. Let's attack together and kill him quickly. That's right. The longer we delay, the more trouble we'll have. Once someone else comes, Sir Moong's reward will be taken away. Attack. Kill him. When the 6 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm saw the world paragons attacking, they rushed towards Su Ming. The 2 people who had been intimidated and retreated previously had regained their confidence, and closed in on Su Ming. "You don't deserve to have the surname M.O." Su Ming's gaze was cold. At the instant the green hand formed by the fog came to seize him, he lifted his right hand, and his vambrace immediately melted. A long red spear gathered in his hand, and once Su Ming held it, he threw it towards the incoming hand. Boom! The green hand crumbled, and as the long spear buzzed, it pierced through the air like a blood dragon. It disintegrated on its own right before the short old man, and turned into an endless amount of blood rain that charged into his face. The short old man's expression darkened. With a cold harumph, he took a few steps back and spun twice on the spot. Immediately, a whirlwind surrounded his body and turned into a whirlwind that was several thousands of feet long that swept outwards. Bang, 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 the sea of wind trembled, and the air trembled. The rain of blood crashed against the whirlwind and was stirred up by the whirlwind. From a distance, the whirlwind looked as if it had been dyed red. Suddenly, a shrill scream of pain rang out from not too far away. It belonged to one of the 6 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm. There was a hole at the center of his brows. Su Ming turned around before him, pulled his finger back, and disappeared. The 4th. Only a cold voice remained, echoing throughout the area. Enraged roars spread out from the whirlwind, and the short old man charged out like a bolt of lightning. He might have blocked the attack from the blood-red long spear, but during that instant of delay, one of the cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm who had come with him had died. This made the old man incredibly angry. Once he walked out, he used his full speed to charge towards Su Ming. However, Su Ming did not even bother fighting against him. It was naturally much harder to kill a Lord of World Plains, especially when he could execute the power of World Plains at any moment he wanted. However, it was different for cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm. They could be said to be very strong, but to Su Ming, his physical body could withstand all divine abilities in Heaven Cultivation Realm. With his arts, while he might not be invincible among those in Heaven Cultivation Realm, there were very few in Heaven Cultivation Realm who could fight against him. The 5th. Booming sounds shook the sky. When Su Ming spoke flatly, the body of a cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm in front of him crumbled. There was still confusion in the dead cultivator's eyes. All the divine abilities he threw at Su Ming before he died landed on him, but they could not make him stop for even a single moment. The 6th. The 7th. Banging sounds rang non-stop, mixed with the old man's enraged roars and the shrill screams of the cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm dying. The faces of the remaining 2 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm, the man and woman, were stark pale at that moment. Monstrous terror appeared in their eyes. They could only watch helplessly as their companions died one by one, and their opponent was a wanted criminal dressed in a long red robe and wearing a black mask. He remained aloof and merciless from the start until the end. Even when all the divine abilities struck him, he was not injured in the slightest. It was as if he did not know pain, as if his body could withstand all forms of destruction. This scene might not have caused the 2 cultivators' minds to break down, but they lost all will to fight in the midst of their shock. Instead, they charged forward, intending to leave, but before they could move too far away, a bloody gust of wind crashed into their faces, and a bloody hole appeared at the center of their brows, as if they had been stung by something. Soon after, at the instant Su Ming's words the 9th echoed in the air, the 2 of them turned into a puddle of blood. The first was Shantai, and you are the 10th. Su Ming turned around and looked at old Emoang, who was incredibly enraged, but could not catch up to him in terms of speed. Old Emoang might have seemed angry, but in truth, he was incredibly calm in his heart. When Su Ming killed the 5th cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm, he had already made up his mind that he would no longer rely on himself to obtain the reward for the World Stones. Shantai, that's the lone world paragon who's not too far away from this place. Judging by his words, could it be that Shantai died in his hands? Since this person is wanted by the 4 great true worlds, then he naturally has his own strength. He can fight head-on against the physical body of a cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm, It's clear that he's still holding back. When he faced me, he didn't panic or try to escape. Clearly, in his mind, even a world paragon won't be able to pose too much of a threat to him. If I want to kill this person, then I'll have to wait for the others to arrive and kill him together. That's the safest bet. After all, the world stones might be priceless treasures, but if I have to give up my life for them, then it's not worth it. Old Moang's face was dark and filled with anger. He stared at Su Ming and lifted his right hand. Green fog was slowly gathering and surrounding his right hand. At that moment, whistling sounds suddenly came from the distance. A dozen-something figures could be vaguely seen charging towards them from the sky. The two people in the lead were clearly world paragons. When they broke through the air, they stirred up a large amount of distorted ripples, causing the wind at the periphery of the ocean of wind to instantly shatter and tumble backwards. 3 world paragons and 10 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Almost at the instant these people closed in on him, he took a step backwards. When he lifted his right hand, a large amount of blood rain gathered in the distance and turned into a long blood-red spear in his hand. Once Su Ming held it, he charged into the depths of the ocean of wind. Thinking of leaving, killing intent shone in old Moang's eyes. The green fog on his right hand exploded with a bang, and waves of fog swept through the area before turning into a 9-headed turtle made of green fog. That turtle had 9 heads, and its body was several tens of thousands of feet long. Once it manifested, it charged towards Su Ming with its body. Brother Mo, stop it. We'll be there immediately. If we kill this person, we can decide how we want to distribute the rewards. After all, we're all from Heavenly Treasures sect. This person's appearance here is a serendipity bestowed upon him by the heavens. Attack with your full strength. Don't think about using up the power of world planes. I've received news that a large number of cultivators from Western Ring Nebula are rushing over here. We have to snatch the reward before they arrive. At the same time Moang attacked, the 2 world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet who were charging over from the distance immediately let out a mighty voice. Their expressions might have seemed calm, but their hearts were filled with excitement. In their eyes, it was impossible for the 3 world paragons on their side to fail. Besides, there was another world paragon from Heavenly Treasure Planet. He was in isolation, which was why he could not come over immediately. However, before long, he would definitely notice the changes in the world and come over. At that time, once the 4 world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet killed this person who was wanted by the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands, they could intimidate the powerful warriors from the outside world. It might be good, but the prerequisite was that they had to kill Su Ming first. Booming sounds shook the area at that moment. At the instant the green 9-headed turtle charged forward with a furious roar, its body froze in midair in a bizarre manner. Once it stopped, its gigantic body started moving backwards, and, as it did so, it looked as if time was flowing in reverse. It turned into wisps of green aura once again and turned into a gigantic ball of air. At the instant this bizarre sight appeared, Moang's eyes went wide, and he sucked in a sharp breath. Control time. Moang's heart trembled, and he immediately moved back. His skin crawled slightly, and an ancient memory surfaced in his head. He had once seen a person who could also control time. Once he executed a divine ability, he could make all those who were in the area of effect instantly age and turn into ashes. Almost at the instant he moved back, Su Ming's right hand withered away. His left hand, legs, and even his entire body withered away. His body instantly shattered into an endless amount of shards like a mirror. With a loud whoosh, those shards charged towards Moang. At that moment, the people in the sky in the distance were already less than 10,000 feet away from this place. They would arrive in an instant, especially the 2 world paragons. As they moved forward, they looked as if they were teleporting. If it was not because they were in star-shattering wind ocean and could not warp, the 2 of them would have been able to arrive even faster. Moang's pupils shrank. He saw Su Ming's body shattering into shards in a bizarre manner. This scene shocked him. At the same time, a strong sense of danger rose madly in his heart. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Emoang did not hesitate. At the instant he moved back, the power of world planes in his body erupted with a bang. That power of world planes was like a viscous substance, and as it spread out from him, a large amount of runic symbols immediately gathered around his body. Shatter! Emoang roared. The runic symbols around his body started rotating rapidly, and a wave of power of law descended on him. With a loud bang, they charged towards a rapidly charging shards that were Su Ming. I will be the one who will kill you, Mo Su. An aloof voice echoed in the air. At the instant, the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet closed in on him, and Emoang roared. The shards that had turned into Su Ming shot through the power of world planes, the shattering runic symbols, and pierced into Emoang's body. The shards pierced his body and swiftly melted and crawled into his body. Emoang let out a shrill scream of pain. His memories were being swiftly devoured, his flesh and blood were swiftly disappearing, and the power of world planes in his body was completely sucked away. Boom! Emoang's body exploded, and a large amount of shards flew out and gathered together in the galaxy to form Su Ming's withered body. Once he recovered, an even more distinct presence of world planes spread out from his body. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 882. Emoang died. At the instant old Emoang's body exploded, the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet closed in on him. However, what caused their hearts to tremble was Emoang's bizarre death. In their eyes, the scene just now was incredibly shocking. Emoang's level of cultivation was the same as theirs, but he had died in such a bizarre manner, causing their hearts to let out a thump against their chests, and they could not help but slow down for a moment. Su Ming turned around and cast his gaze towards the two world paragons. His black mask and icy cold gaze might not usually intimidate others, but once he killed a lord of world planes, he would immediately give off a chilling and bloody feeling. Su Ming swept his gaze past the two incoming world paragons, then swung his arm and turned into a long arc that disappeared into the ocean of wind, gradually becoming indistinct. The two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet looked at each other, and they could see the grave look in each other's eyes. They did not immediately stop Su Ming from leaving. His gaze before he left might have seemed calm, but in truth, there was an aloof, murderous intent contained within it. His meaning was very clear. Those who chased after him would die. This was incredibly clear. The two of them were not the only ones who sensed it. The cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm who had rushed over behind them also had their expressions change. Clearly, Emoang's death and Su Ming's gaze before he left had put an incredibly great pressure on them. Emoang and the 8 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm all died. We might not have arrived in time, but we only had the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. If it were me, I would have been able to kill 8 cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm in that short amount of time, but I wouldn't have been able to kill Emoang within a short period of time. The ocean of wind howled around them, but could not blow away the solemn atmosphere in the place. The two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet fell silent. This person has a lot of tricks up his sleeves, but there's a limit to them, or else he wouldn't have chosen to leave. That's right. If he truly had a power that could completely suppress us, then he would have chosen to attack us just now. He's already at the end of his tether. His actions just now were intentional. His goal was to intimidate us so that we wouldn't dare to chase after him. The more he wants to intimidate us and the more he doesn't want us to chase after him, the more it shows that he's only outwardly strong but inwardly weak, or that he's injured. A glint appeared in the eyes of the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet. After him, we won't give him a single chance. We'll immediately activate our divine abilities of world planes. We'll definitely be able to injure him gravely and kill him. We have to chase after him. The two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet charged forward and turned into 2 long arcs that charged towards the direction where Su Ming had disappeared. The cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm, behind them, had clearly also received the two world paragons' message. At that moment, after a moment of hesitation, a fierce look appeared in their eyes. With a loud whistle, they followed behind them and rushed towards the ocean of wind. As the crowd chased after him, Su Ming charged through the ocean of wind like a bolt of lightning. The wind blew against his body, and banging sounds rang in the air. The deeper he went, the sharper the blades of wind became. Su Ming's expression was calm. As his eyes sparkled, he became even faster. It was true that he could not fight against two lords of world planes at the same time. But with the environment in this place, it was not impossible for him to fight against them. Those pursuers in the starry sky should be arriving soon. As Su Ming charged forward, he lifted his head and cast a glance at the sky. It might have looked dark and boundless, and he could not see any stars, but judging from the time that had passed, the pursuers should be arriving soon. Su Ming, not only will the pursuers come, the forces of power from the four great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands will also come soon. Just what is your plan? If you don't leave this place quickly and stay in one spot for too long, it'll be incredibly dangerous. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in Su Ming's mind. I originally intended to use this place to establish my might and leave. I even wanted to break the seal in this place, so that the sealed great paragons of the alien races could escape and attract everyone's attention, so that I could avoid being chased. Su Ming answered the Duke of Crimson Flame's question. Oh, how about now? Now, I discovered some very interesting things from Moang's memories, and my thoughts have changed. Once I'm certain of the truth behind those things, I will suck in enough power of world planes here, and my physical body will become a lord of world planes. Since they're here to kill me, then I might as well go big this time. Su Ming's eyes shone with a chilling glare as he spoke slowly. The Duke of Crimson Flame remained silent for a moment before he suddenly spoke. I don't know what you discovered, but your actions are very risky. The slightest carelessness will cause you to die. But since you want to go big, then I can help you. I checked it just now, and the paragon of the same world as us sealed in this planet has already lost his will and died in the endless passage of time. But while he might have died, some of his culpa essence has gathered together. Give me enough time. If you can loosen the seal, then I can detonate that culpa essence and make this planet explode. At the instant the Duke of Crimson Flame's voice traveled into Su Ming's mind, his footsteps came to a halt, and he stood still on the spot. How confident are you? He immediately asked. More than a fifth, the Duke of Crimson Flame answered flatly. A freezing glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. He did not speak, but instead charged forward at an increasing speed towards the depths of the ocean of wind. At the same time the wind crashed into his body, the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet were chasing after him in the distance. Something's not right. By the looks of it, he's rushing straight into the depths of star-shattering wind ocean. Even we'll have a hard time fighting against the wind there, and our speed will become slower. Just what does he want to do? That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the eye of the typhoon in the depths of star-shattering wind ocean. You and the other world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet know that the strange eye of the typhoon is a natural relocation cave. Once we step into it, we can instantly be relocated to any spot in Western Ring Nebula. If he steps into that relocation cave, it's impossible for him to know about this. The strange thing about the Eye of the Typhoon is something the four of us discovered together over the past 1,000-something years. Even those in Heaven Cultivation Realm don't know about it, much less outsiders. I hope so. As they continued their chase while sending their thoughts to each other, Su Ming, who was still a distance away from them, faced an even stronger gust of wind. The wind blades sliced his body, and sharp stabs of pain shot through his body. However, besides his powerful physical body, he also had the sacred constellation robe, the 5-direction seal, and Han Mountain Bell. That was why even though he was in pain, his speed did not decrease in the slightest. Besides these various reasons, there was another important reason why he could do this. Su Ming was the Wind Berserker. I am the Wind Berserker, and I obtained the legacy of the Wind Berserker. I couldn't tell the level of cultivation the Wind Berserker left behind in the past, but now that I think about it, he was clearly at the peak of Lords of World Plains, and what he understood was wind. I obtained the legacy of wind and understood the changes in wind. It's much easier for me to move about in the ocean of wind compared to other people. It's a pity that I don't have much time, or else if I could train here for a long period of time, my understanding toward wind would be even greater. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He looked towards the depths of the ocean of wind, and Mo Ang's memories appeared in his head. There's an eye of the typhoon in the depths of the ocean of wind. That eye of the typhoon is a natural relocation cave. As long as I can withstand the power of the ocean of wind and step into the eye of the typhoon, I'll be relocated to any spot in Western Ring Nebula. If that's the case, then I can play with all the people in Heavenly Treasure Planet in a grand manner. Su Ming smiled coldly. After charging forward for a little while longer, he had already stepped into the core of the ocean of wind. The howls of the wind in this place were deafening, and he could only hear an endless amount of booming sounds echoing in his ears. It was difficult for Su Ming to maintain his speed in this place, and he was forced to slow down. However, he had to circulate his full strength, because once he relaxed, his body would be swept away by the wind in this place. What a powerful wind! Even with my physical body and all the methods I have, it's still so difficult for me to move forward. If I could use this wind as a divine ability, then its might would be incredibly great. Su Ming's footsteps came to a halt. He did not continue moving forward, but instead spread his divine sense outwards to cover the area before him. His divine sense instantly started showing signs of shattering in the wind. However, since he was not too far away to begin with, that was why a few breaths before his divine sense disappeared, Su Ming noticed a gigantic vortex floating in the endless ocean of wind 10,000 feet ahead of him, a spot he could not see with his naked eye. That vortex was several hundreds of feet big, and wind was continuously blowing out from within it. In fact, when that wind blew out, Su Ming could sense ripples of relocation reverberating in the air. Is this the strange place you mentioned just now? It's a natural relocation eye of the wind. This place repels divine senses very strongly. Unless you're in this spot, you can investigate it, but if you're far away, it'll be very difficult for you to discover it. I didn't see this place just now, but if you had told me earlier, I would have been able to see some clues if I wanted to, and you wouldn't have needed to spend so much effort to come here and investigate it yourself. You still don't trust me completely. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice traveled into Su Ming's mind. Su Ming did not answer. When it came to matters of life and death, he preferred to personally confirm it before he could be completely at ease. He did not want to rely on others for this sort of thing. Once he was certain that this was indeed a relocation cave, killing intent shone in Su Ming's eyes. Without any hesitation, he swiftly retreated, and with a whoosh, with a speed that was much faster than before, he charged towards the people from Heavenly Treasure Planet who had been chasing after him. The will of autumn has begun. Su Ming's body was practically flickering, and he charged forward like a sword that was about to be drawn out of its scabbard. Before long, the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet were the first to appear in the ocean of wind before Su Ming. He's here. How dare he turn around and fight against us? He's just asking for death. We don't have much time. Attack at full power and execute the arts of world planes to kill this person. A glint appeared in the eyes of the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet. During that instant, without any hesitation, the presence of world planes erupted from their bodies with a bang and turned into a windstorm that swept through the area. It instantly crashed into the ocean of wind, and the powerful power of world planes caused the ocean of wind to tumble backwards with a loud bang. Requesting recommendation votes to be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 883. Boom! The windstorm formed by the power of world planes swept out in all directions and instantly enveloped the area around Su Ming, whom the two world paragons had locked onto. The two of them were confident that if they worked together and executed the power of world planes, then no matter how fast Su Ming was, once he was affected, he would be enveloped by their power of world planes. This was just the initial circulation of their power of world planes. As long as Su Ming was swept into it, then what awaited him would be a series of destructive attacks from the laws of world planes. The ocean of wind around them trembled and spread out in all directions. But at the instant it did so, Su Ming, who had been locked onto by the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet, disappeared. As the power of world planes spread out, Su Ming looked as if he had disappeared from the area of several thousands of feet. At the instant the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet were momentarily stunned, a shrill scream of pain came from the distance. "This is bad." The expressions of the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet instantly changed. They were familiar with the person who had let out that scream of pain. It was one of the cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm who had followed behind them. 20,000-something feet behind them, Su Ming released his grip on the neck of a young man in blue robes. That young man's originally handsome face was twisted at that moment, and he no longer looked like a human. He was as withered as a skeleton, and all his flesh, essence, and life force had been sucked clean by Su Ming during that instant just now. "I can't use my shifting ability often. Every time I use it, I can't recover. I use my origin power, and long-distance shifting is even more exhausting." The Duke of Crimson Flame's calm voice traveled into Su Ming's mind. During the instant the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet executed their power of world planes, Su Ming had already used the Duke of Crimson Flame's divine ability to shift and disappear. He had crossed tens of thousands of feet and appeared in this place. He could not warp in the ocean of wind, but there was no problem with the shifting art that could only be executed by those in plain Culpa Realm. Su Ming did not speak. He only moved, and his killing intent filled his eyes. He charged toward the other cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm. Shrill screams of pain rang out non-stop. The expressions of the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet turned dark. They swiftly retreated and charged towards the direction where the screams of pain had come from. However, before they could fly for more than 10,000 feet, two screams rang out almost at the same time, one from the left and one from the right. Judging from the sounds, there should be a distance of more than 10,000 feet between the two directions. He has a doppelganger. Damn it. Otherwise, there's no way he could have done this. Killing two people who are over 3,000 zhang apart at the same time. Even if he could teleport, he wouldn't be able to do that. Two directions. One is his clone, and the other is his main body. Let's split up. I don't believe that he can kill one of us while we're separated by a distance of 3,000 zhang. The two of us will be able to determine whether it's a clone once we activate the power of world planes. Once we find his real self, we will immediately send word to him, and the other person will have to rush over quickly. Once the two world paragons from Heavenly Treasure Planet sent each other a message, they split up and charged towards the place where the screams of pain came from. The one who flew to the left was the old man. There was anger on his face, but he was incredibly cautious in his heart. He still remembered the bizarre scene of Mo Ang's death. As he charged forward, it only took the span of a few breaths before he saw Su Ming in the ocean of wind in the distance. At the instant he saw Su Ming, the power of world planes erupted from the old man's entire body with a bang, turning into a windstorm that swept through the area. Suddenly, a low roar came from the direction where the other world paragon was 10,000-something feet away. This is his real self. Come quickly. When that roar traveled forth, the pupils of the old world paragon from Heavenly Treasure Planet shrank. His power of world planes erupted from his body and enveloped Su Ming, who was just about to leave. At the instant the old man was enveloped, he could clearly sense chi and blood coming from his body. This feeling and presence meant that this person was definitely not a clone, but his real self. What a cunning person. I don't know what method he used to make others think that the 110,000-something feet away is his real self, but in truth, the one here is his real self. The ocean of wind filled the area. His vision was blocked, and his divine sense was also weakened. However, with the old man's power of world planes, he was certain that his senses would not be wrong. This is his real self. Come quickly. The old man let out a low growl and charged forward. Killing intent shone in his eyes. But just as he was about to chase after Su Ming, a shrill scream of pain suddenly came from 10,000-something feet away. There was an indescribable terror in that scream, as if the person had seen something unbelievable before his death. That voice also caused the old man's body to tremble. Shock appeared on his face, because that voice belonged to none other than his companion, the world paragon from Heavenly Treasure Planet. This is... A loud bang rang out in the old man's heart. That scream of pain came to an abrupt end, and a wave of ripples of death came from 10,000-something feet away. This meant that his companion had died. Could it be that the one over there is his real self? At the instant a wave of terror rose in the old man's heart. Su Ming, who was in the area of his world plane, came to a halt. He no longer fled, but instead turned around to look at the old man with an aloof gaze. At the instant their gazes met, the old man saw Su Ming's body turning into an endless amount of shards that let out piercing howls as they charged towards him from the area of his world plane. Just what is going on? Which one is his real self? Damn it, break. The old man took a few steps back. At that moment, fear filled his heart, and he no longer cared about the depletion of his power of world planes. With a swing of his arm, all his power of world planes erupted from his body. A blue wave of impact erupted from his body and tumbled outwards. Countless figures manifested from that blue wave of impact. Each of those figures let out enraged roars, and from the distance, they looked like an army with an astonishing presence. Yet, as the old man's heart trembled due to his companion's death, and his heart was filled with terror because he could not tell which Su Ming's real self was, the moment he executed his divine ability of world planes, he felt a sharp stab of pain at the center of his brows. That pain traveled straight into his heart and soul, and a black spot appeared at the center of his brows, as if he had been stung by something. That stab of pain instantly charged into his heart and soul, turning into an endless roar in his head. The old man shuddered, and as he let out a scream of pain, his body started melting right before his eyes. His nascent divinity swiftly flew out due to this sudden change, but before he could see his surroundings clearly, the countless shards that had turned into Su Ming's body crashed into the impact of his world plane. As booming sounds rang in the air, some of the shards shot through and stabbed the old man's nascent divinity at lightning speed. As those shards melted, the old man's nascent divinity instantly shattered and turned into countless crystalline shards that scattered in all directions. Those shards then gathered together, and with a flash of light, Su Ming's body manifested. His face was pale, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. However, the power of world planes on his body was incredibly thick at that moment. At first glance, he gave off the feeling that he was a lord of world planes. Impact of world planes. It's still quite difficult for me to kill a world paragon who has activated the power of world planes head-on. Su Ming wiped off the blood at the corners of his mouth. If he killed this person, he would also be injured, and this was the setup he had set up beforehand, or else it would have been even more difficult for him to fight head-on without launching a sneak attack. But as I absorb more power of world planes, the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole will become stronger. When Su Ming lifted his head, a person walked out of the ocean of wind before him. That person's appearance was the exact same as Su Ming's, but when he approached him, he swiftly changed. When he stood in front of Su Ming, he turned into the Duke of Crimson Flame, and the bald crane stood on his shoulder with a smug look on its face. There are still 2 remnants in Heaven Cultivation Realm left. Since they dare to come and kill me, then they must be prepared to die. Su Ming moved and walked into the ocean of wind. The Duke of Crimson Flame and the bald crane turned into 2 rays of flowing light and disappeared into Su Ming's body. After a moment, an incredibly shrill scream came from the ocean of wind. The middle-aged cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm, who was the only one still alive, stood 10,000 feet away. His face was stark pale, and his heart was filled with terror. Malicious spirit, evil spirit, he's not human. The middle-aged cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm's heart trembled. He gritted his teeth and fled madly. He saw the people around him dying one by one, and the screams of pain coming from the world paragon filled him with terror. At that moment, there was no other thought in his mind. The only thing he could think of was to run. As he fled in a state of madness, loud booming sounds came from the dark sky above Heavenly Treasure Planet. Piercing whistles sliced through the sky, and soon after 1, 2, 3 dozens, hundreds of long arcs appeared in the sky. The weakest among the hundreds of long arcs were at the initial stage of Heaven Cultivation Realm. There were also dozens of them who exuded a powerful presence of World Plane Realm. They were the first batch of pursuers who had sensed Su Ming's location in the galaxy and had chased after him. For the rewards from the 4 great true worlds, they could kill anyone. As for those cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm, while they had a world paragon around and their chances were slim, there were many of them on this trip, so it was clear that they would not be in too much danger. The wanted person would definitely die, and there was no chance for him to survive. If that was the case, they would not be in any danger, so it was only natural that they would chase after him. Perhaps if they were lucky, they would have a chance to run into the enemy alone and obtain a serendipity. The feeling is incredibly strong. He's in the ocean of wind. He's in that place filled with wind. I can sense the wanted person's presence there. Haha, don't try to snatch him from me. I'm going to take his life. We still don't know who will be the one to get the reward. The hundreds of long arcs charged towards the star-shattering wind ocean. In the span of a breath, they sliced through the sky and closed in on him. The middle-aged cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm, who was fleeing swiftly in the ocean of wind, was immediately filled with ecstasy when he saw this scene. However, right when that ecstasy appeared, he felt that his speed had instantly doubled. However, at the same time he became faster. He felt as if he was floating. It was soon followed by intense pain, and when he turned his head around, he saw a headless corpse in the distance coughing up blood as it fell to the ground. He also saw a person who had appeared beside him at some unknown point of time, and he was flying with that person, as if he was being carried. That corpse was his. His head was flying, and Su Ming was carrying it. Before the middle-aged cultivator in Heaven Cultivation Realm's vision turned black, the last thing he saw in his life was the hundreds of long arcs rushing towards him. Come, you will also feel my fear. I will be waiting for you. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Qidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 884. You have to pay special attention to one person among the people who came. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice traveled into Su Ming's mind. With your current offensive abilities and the art I taught you to swallow hollow shadows whole, you can kill world paragons, but you will only be in the initial stage of World Plane Realm. If you run into someone in the middle stage of World Plane Realm like Jing Nanzi, then with your arts and divine abilities, you will be able to fight against him, but it will still be difficult for you to win. If you run into a cultivator in the later stage of World Plane Realm, you will definitely die. There are 37 world paragons among these people. 36 of them are in the initial stage of World Plane Realm, and one of them is in the middle stage. You have to be careful of this person. He has the power to trap you, and once you are trapped, you will lose your mobility. You will not be able to survive under the pursuit of these hundreds of people. Su Ming stood in the ocean of wind and let go of the head in his hand. He lifted his head and looked at the long arcs charging towards him in the sky. His eyes were calm, but there was a murderous aura spreading out from them. The rewards offered by the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds are the greatest temptation to cultivators in the initial stage of World Plane Realm and Heaven Cultivation Realm, because they desire world stones dearly. However, to the powerful warriors in the middle stage of World Plane Realm, a few world stones are not from their essence of worlds, so they will be rejected when they use them. Those in the initial stage of world plane realm do not care about that rejection, because the power of world planes they bring out is like the light of a firefly compared to the bright moon of the powerful warriors in the middle stage of world plane realm. That's why they don't care about it, because it's enough. It's different for those in the middle stage of world plane realm. It will be fine if they had a lot of world stones, but these few are too few for them. They won't be of much use. That's why there's only one person in the middle stage of world plane realm among the people who came to kill you. He must have his reasons for coming here, the Duke of Crimson Flame said calmly. Are you saying that as time passes, the 4 great true worlds might increase the rewards? Su Ming asked in his heart as he retreated into the ocean of wind. The possibility is very high. Su Ming did not speak again. His body disappeared from the ocean of wind. After a moment, long arcs stirred up an endless amount of ripples in the sky as they charged into the ocean of wind. Since there were too many people, the ocean of wind trembled. I can make your presence temporarily disappear from the blood identification pearl's senses for 6 hours. Are you certain that you don't want to use these 6 hours to escape? Are you sure that you want to kill in this place? The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in the air. Su Ming did not speak. The ocean of wind blocked his vision and prevented his divine sense from covering this place, turning this place into a dark world. In this dark ocean of wind, Su Ming was like a hunter, and the hundreds of cultivators were his prey. The number of pursuers will increase. The only way is to fight this battle. I have to deal a heavy blow to these pursuers and make a name for myself. I have to kill until the world is dyed red. Only by doing so can I intimidate those who want to hunt me down in the future. I have to win this battle, and I have to win with a bang. This battle will be the battle where I, Su Ming, will rise to power in the barren lands of divine essence. This battle will make me famous. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. Since the blood identification pearl could not lock onto his presence for a short period of time, he instantly appeared in the distance like a ghost. There was a long arc charging towards him, and within it was a middle-aged woman. She was thin, and she was at the peak of Heaven Realm. When she closed in, there was black fog tumbling around her, causing her to look incredibly ferocious. With just one glance, she saw Su Ming swiftly charging towards her from the dark ocean of wind, and crazed delight instantly appeared in her eyes. This person is him. The blood identification pearl in the woman's bosom instantly shone with a red light. With the Duke of Crimson Flame's divine ability, he might be able to make it difficult for the blood identification pearl to lock onto Su Ming. But if he got too close, he would not be able to completely cover him. He's not running. I didn't expect that I would run into this sort of fortuitous event. If I kill him, I can obtain the reward. In the midst of pleasant surprise, the middle-aged woman lifted her right hand. The black fog around her tumbled about and turned into a tiger made of black fog. With a roar, it charged towards Su Ming. Die. You're the one who will die. Su Ming let out a cold shout. His speed instantly increased by several fold, and in an instant, he crashed into the tiger made of black fog. Boom. Impossible. It's impossible for a mere cultivator in Earth cultivation realm to have such speed. The middle-aged woman's pupil shrank. Shock appeared in her eyes, and she immediately retreated swiftly, because she could clearly sense that the black tiger formed by her divine ability had immediately crumbled from within due to the crash just then. But before she could retreat 100 feet, booming sounds rang out once again, and with an indescribable speed, Su Ming appeared right in front of the woman. As she let out a piercing howl, Su Ming moved past her. The blood sword in his left hand stirred up a gush of blood, and with it, he took away the middle-aged woman's head. If I don't scream before I die, it won't be enough to intimidate others. Su Ming's expression was aloof. He did not turn his head back, and neither did he slow down. He charged into the distance, and after a moment, another shrill scream of pain reverberated in the air. That voice spread in all directions, and it was filled with misery and disbelief. 2 people died? Only 2 people died. They should be in the initial stage of heaven cultivation realm. This one, a person has a treasure that allows him to warp. He must have run into two weaklings when he was fleeing. It's normal for people to die, but if I ran into him, he would be the one who died. The hundreds of cultivators in the ocean of wind were completely unbothered. Instead, they charged towards the place where the screams of pain came from. It was especially so for the 30-something world paragons. Their expressions were as calm as ever. They were the fastest, and as they charged forward, they closed in on Su Ming from all directions. After a moment, another shrill scream of pain rang out. Soon after, 3 more screams of pain reverberated in the air. In fact, after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, more than 30 screams of pain came from the ocean of wind. Those shrill screams of pain contained the fear and shock of death, as well as deep regret. Finally, the hearts of the pursuers in the ocean of wind trembled. 31 people. 31 people died. How much time has passed? It's only been around the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. How could 31 people have been killed? And every single time we rushed over, we only saw corpses. We never saw the wanted person. This person isn't in Earth cultivation realm, but the people he killed were all in the initial stage of heaven cultivation realm. Clearly, no matter how high this person's level of cultivation is, he can't be that high. An hour later, shrill screams of pain rang out nonstop. Su Ming moved in the ocean of wind, and the long red spear roared like a crimson dragon and rushed into the chest of a person at the peak of heaven cultivation realm. Boom! As disbelief filled the old man's face, his body was torn to shreds. His nascent divinity was also completely destroyed. The long, blood-red spear flew out from his torn body, and once it was several hundreds of feet away, Su Ming caught it in a flash. Then, he left with the spear and disappeared into the ocean of wind. Not long after he left, whooshing sounds traveled into the air, and dozens of people charged towards them. When they saw the torn corpses on the ground, their expressions turned dark, and their hearts were filled with shock. 83 people. He killed 83 people in the past 2 hours. He didn't run because he treated himself as the hunter and all of us as prey. The dozens of people remained silent for a moment before they swiftly spread out. At the same time, as the 2 hours of slaughter continued and the screams of pain reverberated in the air, a heavy and bloody feeling pressed down on the ocean of wind. No one said anything about the deaths of the people who were killed. It did not matter whether it was their previous disdain or confidence. All of them were shaken after the 80-something people had died. The 90th person, Su Ming, was dressed in a blood-red robe. An aloof glare shone in his eyes as he moved about in the ocean of wind. He might have seemed calm, but in truth, he was already in a murderous frenzy. In this battle, I will let all my pursuers know that they will have to pay a price for trying to kill me. Requesting recommendation votes to be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 885. Bang! In a region filled with incredibly powerful wind blades in the ocean of wind was a body that was torn to shreds. A large amount of shards flew out from the corpse and swiftly gathered together in midair to turn into Su Ming. Su Ming staggered a few steps forward and turned his head around to cast a glance at the torn body behind him with a slightly pale face. You were the 7th world paragon I killed after I left Crimson Flame Planet. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. The power of world planes in his body flourished, and it continued spreading through his body. Originally, with his level of cultivation, he would not have been able to make this power of world planes exist. It would have dissipated on its own. However, the art that the Duke of Crimson Flame had taught him was incredibly powerful. It could trap his body and lock all the power of world planes he devoured in his body, preventing it from dissipating and allowing it to accumulate in his body. When you practice the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole, you will experience 9 stages of saturation. Each time you reach saturation, you'll have to face a disaster. Once you clear it, you will be able to reach a breakthrough. Judging by the power of world planes in your body, you will need to devour 10 more world paragons before you can reach the first stage of saturation. At that time, your physical body will reach the critical point of heaven cultivation realm, and you will touch the barrier to heaven realm. If you can reach a breakthrough, then your physical body will move into world plane realm. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in Su Ming's heart. With a single move, he disappeared into the ocean of wind and charged towards his next target. Just where are you? Where are you? Come out. You're hiding in the ocean of wind and only know how to launch sneak attacks. Don't you dare come out and fight. Come out. Low roars echoed in the ocean of wind. Once nearly 100 people died, there were quite a number of cultivators who had chased after Su Ming into the ocean of wind who were so shaken that they wanted to leave. However, almost every single person who wanted to leave found it difficult to escape death. It was as if the wanted person was like a cruel, venomous snake in the ocean of wind. He was staring at each and every single person, and the moment they relaxed their guard, he would immediately attack and kill them. The screams of pain filled most of the cultivators' hearts with terror. Too many of them had died. In fact, there were even world paragons who had died. This caused the cultivators in the ocean of wind to waver in their determination to chase after Su Ming to kill him. It's been almost 4 hours, but I haven't encountered him even once. Not only does he possess a teleportation magic treasure, he also has the means to locate others. In the ocean of wind was an old man in purple robes walking forward with a frown on his face. Each time he took a step forward, he would travel nearly 1,000 feet. With this sort of speed, it was impossible for him to not be able to find Su Ming within 4 hours. The only explanation was that the other party knew where he was in advance. Interesting. I like to see just how long you can continue hiding. The old man was naturally the only cultivator in the middle stage of World Plane realm among the pursuers who had warned Su Ming. Traces of his strength could be seen from Jing Nanzi's performance in the past. After all, Jing Nanzi was a cultivator in the middle stage of World Plane realm. As Su Ming continued his slaughter, 100-something of the hundreds of people who had rushed into the ocean of wind 4 hours ago died, and the thought of fleeing rose in the hearts of the others. Suddenly, booming sounds reverberated in the sky. As they did so, long arcs appeared in the sky and charged towards the ocean of wind with a howl. This was the second wave of people who had chased after Su Ming in Western Ring Nebula. Among the nearly 500 long arcs, there were 40-something people in the initial stage of World Plane realm. The sound of air being sliced apart spread through the entire heavenly treasure planet. The descent of 500-something people caused the ocean of wind on the ground to tremble violently, as if it was about to collapse. Ah, we finally made it in time. The wanted criminal hasn't been killed yet. This reward is mine. He's definitely not in Earth cultivation realm, since he managed to last until now. But this time, there's no chance for him to survive. Let's see who kills him. The 500-something long arcs charged forward, and as they roared, they rushed straight into the ocean of wind. Boom! Violent sounds shook the entire area, causing the wind in the ocean of wind on the ground to freeze for a moment. Clearly, it was barely withstanding the mighty pressure from the 500-something people. The people who had been terrified by Su Ming's slaughter in the ocean of wind stopped fleeing at that moment. Instead, their eyes sparkled, and they changed their direction to join the ranks of those who chased after Su Ming. There's still 2 hours left before the Duke of Crimson Flame's divine sense covers this area. Since another batch has come, then let me kill to my heart's content. A red glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he disappeared from the ocean of wind once again. After a moment, screams of pain reverberated in the ocean of wind once again. Those screams rose and fell, and all those who ran into Su Ming could not escape death. Su Ming did not bother about those world paragons. His target was mostly on those in Heaven Cultivation Realm. 113, 114, 115. Boom, boom, boom. The ocean of wind tumbled about, and some regions even showed signs of collapsing. Su Ming fell back and blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth. There were 3 people chasing after him, not too far away. The presence of World Plane Realm erupted from their bodies. These 3 people were clearly world paragons. Yet right at the instant their divine abilities closed in on Su Ming and locked down the area to attack him together, ripples spread out from his body with a cold sneer, and he disappeared in the span of a breath. The expressions of the 3 world paragons turned dark. Without a single word, they swiftly split up to search for him once again. When he was about 10,000 feet away from this place, Su Ming appeared in a flash. Killing intent shone in his eyes, and he charged in another direction. 152, 157, 163. Heads flew into the air. All the people Su Ming killed, regardless of whether they were men or women, had 2 similar characteristics. 1, their screams of pain before they died were incredibly shrill and shrill. 2, even if their bodies were torn to shreds, their heads remained, and they were scattered in various spots in the ocean of wind. The ocean of wind could sweep up their corpses, but it could not sweep up their heads. Because Su Ming had left the power of his cultivation base in their heads to keep a lookout. Su Ming's eyes had already turned bloodshot. His killing sword was buzzing, his long spear was flowing with other people's blood, and his robes were completely dyed crimson. In this battle, I will let all of you know the price of chasing after me. I will definitely win this battle. Su Ming threw his head back and roared. As his voice spread through the entire ocean of wind, he also sent out his will to challenge all the cultivators in the area. His roar was heard by the 600 to 700 cultivators in the ocean of wind at that moment. They could also sense the fighting spirit within Su Ming's roar. That fighting spirit shook the sky and earth, causing the howls in the ocean of wind to seem to be roaring along with it. The sky was dark, but as Su Ming roared, the heads of the 163 people he had killed charged into the sky from the ocean of wind at that instant. Each and every head had a different face, and each and every one of them had a horrified expression on their faces. Waves of extremely dense death aura burst out from these 160 heads. The heads danced in midair, and under the control of Su Ming's power, they were swept up in the air above the ocean of wind, turning into a whirlwind made of human heads. The whirlwind howled as it spun. It did not have a presence that shook the sky and earth. Neither did it have an awe-inspiring presence that caused the weather to change. However, the whirlwind formed by the 163 human heads spinning continuously gave off a blood-red, intimidating presence that caused all those who saw it to feel their hearts tremble and their breathing to stop. This was an intimidation, a naked form of intimidation. It was an attack Su Ming delivered to the hearts of his pursuers. He was telling all of them that he, Su Ming, had killed 163 people in the ocean of wind, and this was just the beginning. There would be more as long as they continued. This is nearly 200 heads. He actually killed so many people. That's Sir Chun Fu. He's a world paragon, but he wasn't killed. 163 heads, and 3 of them are world paragons. Just what level of cultivation does this person possess? Uproars came from the ocean of wind. The 600 to 700 people looked at the whirlwind made of human heads in the sky, and at the same time their hearts were filled with shock, a wave of respect towards Su Ming, who had done all of this. The murderer is Mo Su. A low roar reverberated in the world. It was Su Ming's voice. His voice spread in all directions and fused with the whistling sounds coming from the whirlwind made of human heads. When it spread out, it gave all those who heard it the false impression that a thick layer of blood had covered their entire bodies. Mo Su. His name is Mo Su. The person wanted by the 4 great true worlds is Mo Su. This person is definitely a world paragon, or else it would be impossible for him to do this. World Paragon Mo Su. If he escapes from this battle, his name will definitely spread through Western Ring Nebula. The hundreds of people's voices echoed in the ocean of wind. In a corner was an old man in purple robes who was in the middle stage of World Plane Realm. He lifted his head and looked at the whirlwind made of human heads in the sky, and for the first time, A solemn expression appeared on his face. He had been angry previously, but right then his heart trembled. The world paragons who had stepped into world plane realm in the ocean of wind had dark expressions on their faces. They did not care about how many cultivators in heaven plane realm had died, but once they saw the heads of the 3 world paragons in the whirlwind, all of them fell silent. They had to accept a fact. The person wanted by the 4 great true worlds was very strong, very strong. Even if he's strong, so what? He's still just one person. That's right. We've already fought to this point, and there's no possibility of us retreating. It's very difficult for the 4 great true worlds to issue a bounty. If we miss this chance, who knows how many tens of thousands of years we'll have to wait for another bounty to appear. Besides, he might have killed a lot of people, but he only killed 3 world paragons. It's clear that even if he wants to kill them, it won't be easy. Find him, kill him, and get the bounty. Kill him. Most of the near 70 world paragons who were scattered in the ocean of wind chose to continue. With their full speed, they charged towards the direction where Su Ming's voice had come from. However, the cultivators in Heaven Plane Realm were shocked by Su Ming's crazed slaughter, especially when they saw the whirlwind made of human heads in the sky. The 100-something bloody heads made all of them choose to retreat. This was not a battle they could join, and Su was not a serendipity they could obtain. Before they came, they had been pleasantly surprised, but at that moment, they were filled with fear and shock. The price they had to pay for this was heavy, and it was enough for them to remember it for the rest of their lives. At the same time, they would also remember a bloody name. Su. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 886. However, not all cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm chose to leave. There was still a portion of them who did not retreat. Instead, they followed behind the world paragons and watched from the distance. They were still slightly unwilling to admit defeat. Even if they knew that they were weak, the greed in their hearts caused them to overlook their rationality. They were like wolves who saw a tiger fighting against a lion, but continued to linger around the area. They were waiting for a chance that might appear, a chance where both sides would be injured. This was cultivation. Cultivation was to kill. Cultivation was to fight. Cultivation was to seize. It was also about life. There were all sorts of people in life. Among the 800 people, there were nearly 100 who had this sort of thought. However, it did not matter whether it was them or the world paragons. None of them knew that Su Ming had only completed half of his plan for this massacre. He was still far from reaching the peak. He was just casting his net, and it was not time for him to draw it in just yet. I need you to shift, Su Ming said flatly in the depths of the ocean of wind. At the instant he said those words, ripples spread out from his body, and Su Ming's body swiftly disappeared. There's still an hour left. After an hour, I will no longer be able to lock down on you with the blood identification pearls. You take care. As the Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in the air, Su Ming appeared several tens of thousands of feet away. Almost the moment he appeared, he started withering rapidly. His arms, legs, torso, and head all turned into skeletons at that instant. Soon after, with a bang, Su Ming's body was torn to shreds and turned into an endless amount of shards that fused into the wind. Shadows swallowing hollow, shadows whole. Only when he turned into shards and left into the distance did Su Ming's murmurs travel through the air. Boom! Who is it? Who ambushed me? Come out! When a roar rang out, an old world paragon was covered in blood. All the power of world planes in his body spread out, causing wind and clouds to surge around him. A large amount of lightning sliced through the air with loud rumbles. In fact, the people in the distance could hear and sense it. However, less than a moment after the lightning appeared, a shrill roar filled with an unwillingness to admit defeat reverberated in the ocean of wind. Su. The voice came to an abrupt halt. This scene immediately caused West World Supremacy, who was in the ocean of wind, to look extremely grave. Some of them even stopped in their tracks. Progenitor Lei Shan. That was Progenitor Lei Shan's voice just now. He's in the initial stage of world plane realm, and his power is almost at the peak. Once his power of world plane spread out, it's incredibly strong. Ancestor Lei Shan was killed. As these people trembled, the numerous shards that were Su Ming swam about in the ocean of wind. These shards were incredibly broken and slightly dull, but their speed was even faster. The place where the shrapnel had come from was a scene of devastation. Flesh and blood were scattered everywhere, and there was a shrapnel the size of a palm on the ground. It was stabbed into the ground, not moving at all. This sort of fragment was not the only one that existed in this place. In truth, every single time Su Ming killed a world paragon, he would leave behind a fragment like this on the spot where he stood. This fragment was formed by his art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. An hour passed by quickly. The world paragons in the area charged forward and continued searching for Su Ming in the ocean of wind. In fact, there were quite a number of world paragons who did not move alone. Instead, they were in groups. Because of that, while the speed of their search would be much slower, once they ran into Su Ming, their chances of success would be higher. After a moment, another furious roar spread in all directions. Soon after, a loud bang that shook the sky and earth rang out. That loud bang surpassed all the previous sounds and even caused the sky to tremble. The ocean of wind on the ground tumbled backwards to reveal an empty region. A man exploded in that empty region, and the destructive power that was formed swept out in all directions, causing all the people who saw and felt it to be shocked. Self-destruct. He was actually forced to self-destruct. Just what sort of methods does this Emosu have? Damn it. I can't even detect a hint of his presence. How are we supposed to search for him? How are we supposed to kill him? Self-destruct. A large amount of invisible fragments tumbled backwards several thousands of feet away from the area where the explosion occurred. Only when they were swept back nearly 1,000 feet did they slow down. These fragments immediately gathered together and turned into Su Ming. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, then lifted his head to wipe it off while looking at the area where the explosion had occurred. He would rather self-destruct than be devoured by me. This person's reaction is the fastest I've ever met. Su Ming narrowed his eyes. With a single move, he withered once again and turned into a large amount of fragments that charged forward in the ocean of wind. One, another, and another. In a short span of time, 3 roars rang out, and 3 heads flew up into the whirlwind of human heads in midair. This meant that 3 world paragons had died during this short period of time. These were world paragons, not cultivators in heaven cultivation realm, but lords of world planes. All of them could be said to be standing at the peak of their cultivation planets and were incredibly difficult to kill. Yet now, nearly 10 world paragons had died in Heavenly Treasure Planet's ocean of wind. In fact, 3 of them had even self-destructed. This sort of slaughter caused the hearts of the world paragons in the ocean of wind to tremble violently. In fact, even their footsteps forward slowed down. In their eyes, the dark ocean of wind was no longer a serendipity that was within their reach, but an ancient, ferocious beast with its mouth wide open. They could not see Emosu, and neither could they sense his presence. They could only sense him when he was close to them, but all those who noticed him would either self-destruct or die. This caused them to be shocked, and it was difficult for them to continue. Yet at the instant the thought of retreating rose in the hearts of all the world paragons, the 6 hours disappeared, and the time taken for half an incense stick to burn was brought forward. I can't continue. I've been disturbed by an external force. Su Ming, the 4 great true worlds, are here. As the Duke of Crimson Flames, sighs spread through Su Ming's mind. Su Ming's body appeared as the fragments gathered together. His face was pale, and there was blood at the corners of his mouth. However, the presence of world planes spreading out from his body was incredibly thick. This was the presence that had naturally appeared in Su Ming's body after he devoured a dozen something lords of world planes. More accurately speaking, this was the presence of his physical body. I can sense that I've already touched the barrier you spoke of in Heaven Cultivation Realm. If I can devour one more person, they'll be able to touch this barrier completely. Su Ming shook his head. At the instant his body appeared, he swiftly retreated towards the depths of the ocean of wind, where the eye of the typhoon was. Almost at the instant the Duke of Crimson Flame's art disappeared from Su Ming's body, the blood identification pearls carried by the world paragons in the ocean of wind instantly erupted with a powerful red light. At the same time, Su Ming's presence instantly became incredibly clear in their hearts. They could easily lock onto his location. This sort of feeling was akin to a blind man suddenly discovering that he had regained his sight once he closed his eyes and opened them once again. He saw Mo Su's location. This is... the heavens are helping me. Mo Su, let's see how you'll counterattack this time. Mo Su used some sort of art to hide his presence just now. Right now, that art has clearly lost its effect. His presence is incredibly clear. This time, he has nowhere to hide. Once he shows himself, it's as if his legs were cut off. As long as I'm careful of Mo Su's strange art and don't get too close to him, then I won't be in any danger. Instead, when the others go up and fight against him, I'll have a chance. The appearance of Su Ming's presence caused the world paragons who had been thinking of retreating to instantly feel delighted. They charged towards Su Ming's location at full speed from all directions with extreme accuracy. They had been oppressed for far too long. The feeling of being blind previously caused almost all of them to bring out their full strength once they erupted with power. However, no one noticed that there were 13 regions in the ocean of wind with dull, inconspicuous shards piercing into the ground. There were 13 of them, and all of them had been left behind by Su Ming. All of the spots where he had left these shards were places where he had killed world paragons. There was a hint of Su Ming's origin life's presence in each of these shards. Almost at the same time, the world paragons in the area charged towards the spot where Su Ming was. Shocking booming sounds came from the sky above Heavenly Treasure Planet. Those sounds continued without end, causing the dark sky to look as if raging waves had been stirred up. This strange sight attracted a lot of people's attention. At that moment, a great, mighty pressure descended on the ground from the sky. As ripples spread out in the galaxy beyond Heavenly Treasure Planet, gigantic ancient bronze swords appeared as if they had torn through the galaxy. The first to appear was the tip of the ancient sword. There were black bolts of lightning swimming along its edge. In just the span of a few breaths, complete ancient swords appeared, and a vast, mighty pressure instantly enveloped the entire Heavenly Treasure Planet. There were 9 gigantic ancient bronze swords in total. They floated in the galaxy and surrounded Heavenly Treasure Planet. There were thousands of people from the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds standing on each of the swords. It was especially so for those standing on the tips of the swords. When their power spread out, it could be seen that quite a number of them were in the middle stage of World Plane Realm. The 4 great true worlds had arrived. At the instant the 9 ancient swords appeared, a person flew up from the tip of each ancient sword. There were 9 of them in total, and when they were in midair, golden light shone on their bodies. An endless amount of golden threads surrounded their bodies and turned into 9 miniature ancient swords that were several hundreds of feet long. Just like how Jing Nanzi, who was a true guard, possessed a blood-red coffin, the true guards who flew out from the ancient bronze swords possessed similar enchanted treasures. The 9 swords sliced through the galaxy and stirred up piercing whistles as they charged towards Heavenly Treasure Planet. In an instant, they shot through the highest layer of wind in the planet and descended on the sky, causing Heavenly Treasure Planet to tremble violently. The 9 long arcs and 9 swords instantly closed in on the ocean of wind. This might have seemed slow, but in truth, it happened incredibly quickly. When the people in the ocean of wind noticed the mighty pressure spreading out from the sky, they saw the 9 long arcs arriving. Boom, boom, boom. 9 consecutive booms rang out. The ground trembled 9 times, and the 9 ancient swords rushed into the ocean of wind and stabbed into the ground. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 887. The art of swallowing hollow shadows whole has 9 stages of saturation, 9 disasters, and you can ascend to the sky and become a saint. There are also 9 divine abilities that can be executed with this art. The first of these 9 divine abilities is known as earthen script. Cultivate the script of the earth, and this is the tomb. Once you reach the first saturation, you can execute this art. Once you go through the disasters, turn the earth into earth, and cultivate the script of the earth into a tomb. Su Ming stood at the core of the ocean of wind. The eye of the typhoon was several thousands of feet behind him. As he stood there, he lifted his head and looked at the 9 long arcs coming towards him from the sky. The divine abilities he could execute with the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole appeared in his head. I've already reached the first saturation, and I should be able to execute the art of earthen script. A freezing glare shone in Su Ming's eyes. In truth, he had already made detailed preparations for executing the art of earthen script a long time ago. He only needed to wait for his body to reach the first saturation before he could execute it. At that moment, violent tremors traveled through the ocean of wind. As the 9 long swords stabbed into the ground shattered with a bang. Even the rotating violent gust of wind fell backwards. As for the whirlwind formed by the human heads Su Ming had formed in the sky, once one of the ancient swords pierced through it, it shattered and scattered in all directions. Once the ground trembled 9 times, besides the depths of the core of the ocean of wind, all the other parts of the ocean of wind crashed into each other and disappeared without a trace. As the ocean of wind disappeared, besides the depths of the core, the other parts of the ocean of wind became empty. There was no longer anything obstructing their vision, and their divine senses could spread out. What caused the hearts of all the cultivators in the area to tremble and stop moving to put on respectful and submissive expressions were the 9 ancient swords that had stabbed into the ground around the core of the ocean of wind. The 9 ancient swords seemed to have surrounded the core of the ocean of wind, forming a ring. True guards. The cultivators in the area fell silent, and complicated looks were hidden in their eyes. Boom! 9 consecutive bangs rang out at the same time. A large amount of cracks appeared on the 9 ancient swords, and they shattered into countless shards to reveal the 9 people meditating within them. The 9 people stood up at the same time. The ancient sword shattered. As they did so, the shards of the ancient swords gathered together, and as cracking sounds reverberated in the air, they turned into 9 sets of armor around the 9 people. The bronze-color battle armor on these 9 people flickered with a demonic light. There were also a large number of runes on the battle armor, filled with a mysterious aura. There were men and women among these 9 people. The oldest was an old man, and the youngest was a young man. They all had cold expressions and loathing in their eyes. The true guards are arresting criminals. Wait in the surroundings and don't leave. When an old man with crimson hair spoke languidly, the mighty pressure of someone in the middle stage of world plane realm spread out. As his voice reverberated in the air, it turned into a powerful, mighty pressure. With his status as a true guard, it caused the world paragons in the area to lower their heads in silence. In the face of the powerful forces of power from the true world keeping a lookout over the barren lands of divine essence, the sinners did not dare to fight back. When the old true guard saw how obedient the people around him were, he seemed to be used to it. He turned around and charged into the core of the sea of wind. The other 8 people also disappeared into the sea of wind. Based on Reverend Ian Sacred's will, since this person first appeared in Western Ring Nebula and Crimson Flame Planet is part of Western Ring Nebula, the True Guard from True Sacredine World are keeping a lookout over Western Ring Nebula. Then we don't have to care about the Radix Planet's orders. If we can capture this person alive, it would be best. He has a secret on him that the Reverend needs to obtain. Of course, if we can't capture him alive, then since the Reverend won't be able to obtain that secret, we can't let the other 3 true worlds obtain it either. We can only kill him. As for the bounty on his head, If the Reverend hadn't suppressed it, he wouldn't have used just a few world stones as bait, and he wouldn't have only tempted those in the initial stage of world-plane realm among the sinners. All of this is because the Reverend is worried that this person will be killed prematurely and create a chance for us. Our priority in this battle is to capture him alive. At the instant the 9 people stepped into the sea of wind, they immediately sent messages to each other. They might be true guards, but they were still from true Sacredine world, which was why they would first obey true Sacredine world's orders. At the instant the 9 true guards charged into the sea of wind, killing intent shone in Su Ming's eyes as he stood at the center of the ocean of wind. He sucked in a deep breath. Then once he sat down cross-legged, he formed a seal with his hands, placed them on his knees, and closed his eyes. We could draw on the net now. True guards in the middle stage of world plane realm. Duke of Crimson Flame, if I can devour one person, will I be able to break through the first saturation and move in a world plane realm with my physical body? If you can execute the complete earthen script art, then you will have a 3/10 of a chance to kill a powerful warrior in the middle stage of world plane realm. But right now, you're just at the saturation point. You haven't gone through the disaster, so you can only execute the earthen script art. You won't be able to devour them. I want to try. If I succeed, then it'll be for the best. If I fail, then detonate the essence formed by the great cultivators sealed in this planet and shift me to the eye of the typhoon. You won't be able to devour them. All right, I've already made my preparations. I can detonate the essence sealed in this planet at any moment. As the Duke of Crimson Flame's calm voice echoed in Su Ming's mind, he lifted his hands slowly. At the instant he lifted his hands, there was no longer any wind in the area beyond the core of the ocean of wind. The 9 remaining shards Su Ming had left behind in the empty land instantly erupted with a piercing light. Besides these 9 spots, there were 4 other spots in the darkness at the core of the ocean of wind. Those shards were also shining with a dazzling light at that moment. As Su Ming lifted his right hand higher than his left, he formed a seal and pushed his palm against the ground. Immediately, the ground in the ocean of wind let out a bang, and the 9 shards let out a piercing buzz before turning into 9 long arcs that charged towards the core of the ocean of wind. The buzzing and howling from the 9 shards immediately caught the attention of the cultivators outside. When they looked over, they saw the 9 long arcs charging forward and charging into the ocean of wind in the blink of an eye. Each of those spots is where a world paragon died. Could it be that Emos Su prepared them beforehand? This is definitely some sort of divine ability. None of the people alerted the true guards. Once they noticed it, their eyes sparkled and they focused their attention on the ocean of wind. At the instant the 9 shards turned into long arcs and rushed into the ocean of wind, the 4 shards in the ocean of wind also rose up with a loud whistle. Because of that, 13 shards charged towards the place where Su Ming was from all directions. At that moment, the 9 true guard around Su Ming were traveling at an incredibly fast speed. In the blink of an eye, they were already not too far away from him. 9 waves of mighty pressure spread out at the same time, forming an art that was similar to a cage that went to suppress Su Ming with loud, booming sounds. They could see Su Ming sitting cross-legged. His eyes flew open at that instant. When he sensed the 9 people closing in on him, he lifted his left hand and pressed it against the center of his brows. At that moment, Su Ming had his right hand pressed against the ground and his left hand pressed against the center of his brows. The light in his eyes was rapidly fading away, and even the ripples of his life force had practically stopped. It was as if he was swiftly dying. As Su Ming did this, the 13 shards charging towards him in the ocean of wind became even faster, and their light became even more dazzling. However, the 9 true guards had already closed in on Su Ming. As each of them formed a seal with their hands, 9 rays of light of different colors erupted from their bodies. The 9 rays of light intertwined with each other in midair as if they were weaving a web. They turned into a huge 9-colored net that swiftly closed in on Su Ming. By the looks of it, they wanted to trap him within. You can't escape. A cold harumph came from one of the 9 people. With a bang, the net was already less than 200 feet away from Su Ming. The wind in the area disappeared once it touched the net. In fact, wherever the net went, the air would shatter, as if it had been torn apart by force. When he saw that the net was about to fall on him, veins popped up on Su Ming's face, and he lifted his head swiftly. Earthen script. At the instant Su Ming shouted those 2 words, his body immediately shattered, but he did not turn into shards. Instead, like the particles of earth, he shuddered and looked as if he had turned into a stone statue. Once he shattered, he turned into earth, and with his body swept up, he rushed towards the old man who was the closest to Su Ming among the 9 people. At the same time, the 13 shards whistled through the air and charged at the old man at an extremely fast speed. You overestimate yourself. I'll hold him back. All of you control the seal net and capture this person alive. The old man let out a cold harumph, and the power of world planes in his body erupted with a bang. A faint golden wave of impact swept outwards from the old man as the power of world planes erupted. In the blink of an eye, it covered an area of 10,000 feet. Within that area, the air, all living beings, and everything else turned a faint golden color. This sort of control over the power of world planes was the sign of those who had stepped into the middle stage of world plane realm. The laws of the world and all the essences of essence were forcefully chased away in that area of 10,000 feet. The only thing left behind was the old man's words. In my void space, if I say you will be injured, then you will definitely be injured. The old man swung his arm and lifted his right hand to point at Su Ming, who had turned into earth and was charging towards him. Injure, injure, injure. A large area of the dirt Su Ming had turned into instantly shattered. In the blink of an eye, half of it disappeared, and the remaining half turned into a face in midair. That face belonged to Su Ming, and there was weakness on his face, along with madness. Earthen script, Su Ming roared. His speed swiftly increased by several fold, and the 13 shards that were charging toward him shot through the faint golden region. In the blink of an eye, they appeared behind the old man. This sudden scene caused the old man's pupils to shrink. It was difficult for his world plane realm to stop Su Ming's transformation, but before he could execute his divine ability again, boom, 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 several consecutive booms reverberated in the sky and earth. The earth that was Su Ming covered the old man's entire body and turned into a bump that looked like a grave. The 13 shards shot through the air and entered the grave. As they swiftly gathered together, they formed a tombstone. A picture was swiftly being drawn on that tombstone. There was a person drawn on that picture, and that person had the appearance of the old True Guard. Requesting recommendation votes to be continued. If you like this work, please come to Start Point and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 888. However, it was a little incomplete, a little blurry, and not very clear. They could only vaguely see that the old man's expression was filled with disbelief and shock. It was difficult for the grave mound to gain corporeal form, as it was in a state where it was both real and fake. Boom! The tombstone shattered, and the grave mound crumbled. Once it gathered together to form Su Ming, he coughed up a huge mouthful of blood with a pale face. A look of pity appeared on his face. As the mound shattered, the old True Guard was revealed. The old man's body had become much thinner during the short span of a few breaths. His eyes had sunken deeply, and even his power of world planes had been reduced by nearly 3/10. At the same time shock appeared in his eyes, there was also anger and lingering fear. What is this divine ability? It's clearly incomplete. If this art was complete, then its might would be incredibly terrifying. This person can't be captured alive. We have to kill him. The sight of Su Ming casting the earthen script to cover the old man and turning him into a grave not only shocked the old man, but also caused the pupils of the other 8 people to shrink. To them, This strange art definitely did not belong to the system of divine abilities from the four great true worlds. The alien race's art. This is the alien race's art. At the same time, one of the 8 people said these words. The 9-colored net expanded endlessly and shrank swiftly towards Su Ming, intending to bind him within. At that moment, ripples immediately spread out from Su Ming's retreating body. Those ripples instantly covered his entire body, causing him to let out a hum and disappear from the 9 people's eyes the instant he was bound by the net. Shift. At the same time their expressions changed, they immediately noticed that Su Ming had appeared at the core of the ocean of wind several thousands of feet away, which was also the eye of the typhoon. After him, the 9 people turned into 9 long arcs that charged towards Su Ming, who was standing beside the eye of the typhoon several thousands of feet away. To them, several thousands of feet was a distance they could cover in the span of a breath. However, almost at the instant the 9 people charged forward, Su Ming appeared beside the eye of the typhoon. He withstood the powerful gust of wind around him, and once he stepped into the eye of the typhoon, he turned his head around and cast a glance at the 9 people charging towards him. There was still blood at the corners of his mouth that he did not have time to wipe off. When he turned his head around to look, a freezing glare shone in his eyes. Relocation cave. Damn it. Why is there a relocation cave here? We can't let him escape. There's no way to capture him alive. Kill him. As true guards and powerful warriors in the middle stage of World Plane Realm, their experience was naturally extraordinary. When they saw Su Ming's actions, they immediately noticed the strangeness of the eye of the typhoon. I've prepared a big gift for you. As Su Ming laughed coldly, he stepped into the eye of the typhoon. His body instantly became indistinct, and the ground in Heavenly Treasure Planet suddenly started trembling furiously. Boom! A pillar of air that was tens of thousands of feet thick shot into the sky from a spot on the ground. At the same time Heavenly Treasure Planet trembled, a second pillar of air that was tens of thousands of feet tall rose from the ground in the ocean of wind. The impact formed and the destructive presence swept through the world in all directions, causing the expressions of the 9 true guards to change in shock. Right before them, right beyond the eye of the typhoon, where Su Ming was swiftly disappearing, the ground collapsed, and a pillar of light with a destructive presence erupted forth swiftly. The moment the pillar of light shot into the sky, the 9 true guards retreated without any hesitation. One of them was a little slow, and once he was enveloped by the pillar of light, he did not even have the chance to struggle. His entire body and armor were instantly turned into ashes. His body and soul were destroyed. The source of the alien race. This is the source that remains after the will of the alien race that was sealed in Heavenly Treasure Planet disappeared. He's indeed the source of the change in Crimson Flame Planet. He actually broke the seal on Heavenly Treasure Planet. As the 8 people retreated in shock, booming sounds rang out non-stop from various spots in Heavenly Treasure Planet. Pillars of air that shook the sky and earth rushed into the sky, and wherever the ripples went, the world would be destroyed. Fortunately, there were no mortals in Heavenly Treasure Planet. The only people who remained were cultivators, or else if this sort of change happened in a cultivation planet filled with spiritual aura, all lives would definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. The lives and deaths of cultivators had always been a form of elimination by the universe. From the moment they stepped onto the path of cultivation, they had to be prepared to either be killed or be killed. Booming sounds rang out nonstop. Due to the existence of the Eye of the Typhoon and the Duke of Crimson Flame's control, Su Ming was not affected by the attack. His body was swiftly fading away, and at the instant he was about to be relocated, the tips of the 9 gigantic ancient bronze swords that had stopped beyond Heavenly Treasure Planet suddenly shone with a brilliant light. Flowing streams of light flowed out and swam about at the edges of the swords. These are the true guards on the ancient bronze swords. They had received the divine sense from the remaining 8 true guards in Heavenly Treasure Planet and were no longer thinking about capturing Su Ming alive. They were going to carry out their plan to kill him. Destroying Heavenly Treasure Planet was the same as destroying all the lives on the planet. Naturally, it also meant killing Su Ming. Boom, boom, boom. 9 rays of sword aura that were hundreds of thousands of leagues long shot out from the ancient bronze swords at that instant and rushed into Heavenly Treasure Planet. Their target was the Eye of the Typhoon, where Su Ming was located in the Ocean of Wind. At the same time a ray of sword aura shot through Heavenly Treasure Planet, it crashed into the essence that the Duke of Crimson Flame had brought forth. A loud bang that could destroy the sky and earth erupted, and a part of Heavenly Treasure Planet crumbled right before everyone's eyes. Booming sounds reverberated non-stop in the galaxy. Heavenly Treasure Planet continued crumbling. The rays of sword aura crashed into the Eye of the Typhoon and shattered the pillars of air. They destroyed the Eye of the Typhoon and blasted a huge hole in the region where the Eye of the Typhoon was. That hole pierced through Heavenly Treasure Planet. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a loud bang that shocked a small portion of Western Ring Nebula reverberated in the air. As a large amount of ripples continued spreading out in all directions, and as an endless amount of shattered stones tumbled backwards, Heavenly Treasure Planet collapsed. The impact that was stirred up destroyed all lives. Besides the 8 true guards who managed to survive after one of them died, and turned into 8 long arcs that returned to the ancient swords, the purple-robed old man in the middle stage of Worldplane Realm was the only one who managed to warp and escape after being heavily injured. None of the others survived. It was impossible to tell whether the one who destroyed the planet was Su Ming or the true guards. In truth, the essence that Su Ming had brought forth might have seemed vast, but 9/10 of its explosive power was gathered in the Ocean of Wind. It would not affect the land too much, and neither would it cause Heavenly Treasure Planet to completely crumble like this. What truly destroyed Heavenly Treasure Planet were the 9 incredibly terrifying rays of sword aura. This was the first time Su Ming fought head-on against the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds, keeping a lookout over the barren lands. Since the true guard from True Sacredine World wanted to capture Su Ming alive, they did not attack and chose to use this method to kill him, or else Su Ming would not have the slightest bit of power to fight back and would have died with Heavenly Treasure Planet. However, after experiencing this change, the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds, keeping a lookout over the barren lands, would no longer think about capturing Su Ming alive the next time they found him. Instead, they would use this method to kill him cleanly and cleanly. The impact and booming sound stirred up by Heavenly Treasure Planet's collapse lasted for several months, shocking all the powerful warriors in Western Ring Nebula. Besides the cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm who had been intimidated by Su Ming and left in the beginning, almost all of them had been killed in this battle. Besides being related to the True Guards, all of the attacks pointed towards one person. That person's name had also spread through Western Ring Nebula from the mouths of the cultivators in Heaven Cultivation Realm who had left in fear. Mo Su. The wanted person was Mo Su. With his own power, he had killed countless powerful warriors and even made the 4 great true worlds destroy a planet. This sort of great action and method that shocked all the people caused Mo Su's name to ring through Western Ring Nebula. All those who wanted to continue chasing after Su Ming would first think about the drastic change in Heavenly Treasure Planet before considering their own strength. Gradually, most of them gave up on the thought of chasing after him, because this was no longer a chase, but a death wish. Su Ming had made a name for himself with one battle. He had intimidated others with one battle. Su Ming had also made a name for himself with his slaughter. Besides Su Ming's slaughter and the shock from Heavenly Treasure Planet's collapse, there was another important reason for Mo Su's name to spread through Western Ring Nebula. On the 10th day after Heavenly Treasure Planet's collapse, the 4 great true worlds once again issued a bounty for Su Ming's capture through the entire barren lands of Divine Essence. They also increased the bounty, increasing it from a reward that could only catch the attention of those in the initial stage of Worldplane Realm to a reward that could make most of the cultivators in Western Ring Nebula go mad. 100 World Stones. It did not matter whether he lived or died. 100 world stones. This sort of reward had appeared before. During the change in Black Ink Planet, the bounty for the mighty cultivator of the alien race who escaped from Black Ink Planet had been 2,000 world stones. However, it had to be known that the mighty cultivator of the alien race who could escape the seal was definitely not a weakling, which was why such a tempting bounty was offered. Only this sort of bounty could make the truly powerful warriors in the barren lands of divine essence temporarily suppress their hatred towards the four great true worlds and be ordered around by them. Su Ming might be strong, but compared to the mighty cultivator of the alien race, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. That was why the reward of 100 world stones was still enough to make people's hearts pound in excitement. As the bounty increased, all the cultivators who believed that they could obtain this reward in Western Ring Nebula cast their gazes on Mo Su, and a storm of people searching for him was raging furiously. A month after Heavenly Treasure Planet collapsed, a gigantic crack appeared out of nowhere in the vast galaxy at the center of Western Ring Nebula. Dark light shone from the crack, and a person walked out from within. That person had gray hair and was dressed in a red robe. Naturally, he was Su Ming. Once he walked out, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. His blood immediately shattered in the galaxy and turned into a layer of blood fog that spread out. In fact, an indistinct sword aura could be seen faintly within that blood fog. It was precisely because of this sword aura that Su Ming's blood had shattered into fog once he coughed up it. Those 9 waves of sword aura can destroy a cultivation planet. Even if I was relocated before they descended, I was still affected by them. Not only did I fall unconscious for a month in that still space, my body was also severely injured by the shock. Su Ming's face was pale. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. He lifted his right hand and tore open his sacred constellation robe to see a bruise on his chest. That bruise looked like a sword, and the tip of that sword was Su Ming's heart. Just being shaken by it already had such power. No wonder it could destroy Heavenly Treasure Planet. 4 great true worlds. You were the ones who provoked me first. Then I will not let this matter rest until I die. Su Ming's expression was dark. He was a stubborn person. Ever since he was forced to come to the barren lands of divine essence, he had been suppressing his emotions. Right then, as he was being chased down and injured, the madness in his personality erupted forth. Murderous aura filled his entire body, and once he swept his gaze across the area, he turned into a long arc and left into the distance. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 889. The galaxy was like an ocean, but it was black in color. It did not have any raging waves, neither did it have any terrifying wind or waves, but it had an endless and boundless air about it. The cultivation planets would occasionally shine with a brilliant light. From a distance, they looked like a moving sea of fog, and the endless amount of dust formed the galaxy. More accurately speaking, the barren lands of divine essence was formed by 3 parts. The deepest part was divine essence star ocean, the middle part was sinful barren lands, and the outermost part was the galaxy where the 4 great true worlds kept a lookout over it. If the barren lands of divine essence were compared to a gourd, then divine essence star ocean would be the lower half of the gourd, and sinful barren lands would be 1/2 of the upper half. The 4 great true worlds kept a lookout over it would be the other half. At the same time, they would also control the galaxy around the mouth of the gourd. Western Ring Nebula, where Su Ming was part of sinful barren lands. The forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over it could intimidate the 4 regions in sinful barren lands, but the 4 regions, including Western Ring Nebula, did not exist in different directions. They were placed side by side. Similarly, the internal structure of the galaxy where the 4 great true worlds kept a lookout over it was the same. The region near the exit of the gourd was their main camp, and the region near sinful barren lands was divided into 4 regions, each of which monitored and covered the 4 regions, including Western Ring Nebula. True Sacred World controlled and monitored Western Ring Nebula. Black Ink Planet, which was mentioned by many cultivators by word of mouth, was in truth a dividing line, a tipping point. Its location was the sunken spot between the upper and lower parts of the gourd. Once a person stepped past Black Ink Planet, it would be the same as stepping into Divine Essence Star Ocean. The four great true worlds rarely ventured into Divine Essence Star Ocean, and they were incredibly wary of it. In fact, there were even rumors that the four great true worlds were not keeping a lookout over the cultivators in sinful barren lands, but the alien races that might still exist in Divine Essence Star Ocean. When Su Ming was being hunted in Western Ring Nebula in sinful barren lands, the galaxy belonging to the four great true worlds in the barren lands of Divine Essence was undergoing a change that happened once every few hundreds of years. Every single time they took turns, a portion of the true guards would leave the barren lands of Divine Essence and return to their true worlds, as if it was time for them to serve. Similarly, there would also be new people from the four great true worlds who would be sent here to become new true guards. It did not matter whether they were leaving or coming. The cultivators who were taking their place in the four great true worlds would carry out this sort of handover in the main camp of the four great true worlds. The old ones would leave, and the newcomers would be taken away by the people from their true worlds in the main camp to head to the galaxy where their true worlds needed to keep a lookout. The true Sacred guards brought the newbies back to their true worlds to be stationed in the galaxy in the barren lands of Divine Essence, where three ancient bronze swords that were 100,000 feet long. At that moment, these three ancient swords were flying calmly in the galaxy. Two of them were escorted by the sides, and the ancient sword in the middle was the main focus. They were returning from the direction of the main camp to the place where they were stationed. This time, True Sacred World had sent nearly 100 people over, and all of them were lords of world planes. There were 100 people sitting cross-legged and meditating on the 100,000 feet sword at the center. Standing before them was a middle-aged man dressed in battle armor. That middle-aged man had a head full of white hair, and there was an awe-inspiring look on his face. Once he swept his gaze past the 100 people, his gaze lingered on three of them for a moment. The first person he paid attention to was an ancient old man. That person was incredibly tall and built, and as he sat there, he was much taller than the others. In fact, the area around him was empty, and besides his two companions, no one else dared to get close to him. When the middle-aged man in battle armor looked towards him, the old man lifted his head and looked back at him coldly. I heard a long time ago that the progenitor of the spirits of Nine, returned to the true world many years ago and was highly regarded by Lord Sacred. He personally took back the galaxy that belonged to this race from the hands of various forces of power, and once he modified it, he returned it to the spirits of Nine. In fact, he even used a treasure from the true world to create physical bodies for the spirits of Nine so that their souls could gather together in their new physical bodies. It was as if they were resurrected, and they became half-dead living beings. A barely noticeable glint appeared in the eyes of the middle-aged man in battle armor. "Sir, your level of cultivation is extraordinary. How may I address you?" The middle-aged man suddenly asked as he looked at the old man. "Spirits of Nine, Zilong Shun," the old man answered flatly. "Zilong Shun, what about the two of you?" The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes and looked at the two remaining people beside the old man. One of them was a man whose body was only second to the old man's. That man's expression was calm, but a freezing glare would occasionally flash in his eyes, as if there was an endless amount of murderous aura contained within his body. He looked at the middle-aged man and grinned. "Li Hua, spirits of Nine." The last person was dressed in a wide black robe. His skin and face that were exposed were covered in black patterns. He had no hair, and even his eyes were a little lifeless. However, there was a hint of murderous aura hidden within that lifeless gaze, and when the middle-aged man saw it, his pupils shrank. "Ji and Hai." His voice was incredibly piercing to the ears, as if his bones were rubbing against each other. There was also a thick aura of death around him, and it was a terrifying sight to behold. All right, I didn't expect that 3 spirits of 9 Een would come this time. Your race has disappeared from the true world for a long time. This should be the first time you've come to the barren lands of divine essence after you returned. True Sacred Een World monitors and keeps a lookout over Western Ring Nebula, one of the 4 great regions in sinful barren lands. There are some powerful warriors in this region, but they're not the main focus. True Sacred Een World's true mission and enemy are the alien races in divine essence Star Ocean. We must prevent them from rushing out and intimidate the alien races. The middle-aged man swung his arm, and as the 3 ancient bronze swords charged through the galaxy, they gradually left into the distance. The people could vaguely hear the man's voice. Recently, something interesting happened in Western Ring Nebula. A person called Mo-Su is wanted by the 4 great true worlds. All of you have just become true guards. If any one of you can kill this person, it will be considered a great meritorious deed. When the people from True Sacred Een World went to the place where they were stationed, 2 huge dragons that were 100,000 feet long roared in another direction that belonged to the forces of power from True Morning Tao World, keeping a lookout over the barren lands. These 2 huge dragons had ferocious appearances. There were runic symbols shining on each of their scales. At that moment, as they flew, there were quite a number of cultivators on their bodies. There was a person standing on one of the huge dragons. That person looked to be in his 30s, and he had an aloof expression on his face. He was dressed in a sacred constellation robe, and the stars on his robe were rotating slowly. Behind him were numerous cultivators with respectful expressions on their faces. Young master, this is the barren lands of divine essence. Once we leave the area where True Morning Tao World is stationed, we will reach sinful barren lands. That place is filled with murderous people, and it will become the best training ground for you, young master. The young man in the sacred constellation robe nodded faintly, then turned his head around to look at the other huge dragon not too far in the distance. There, he saw a young man dressed in white standing on the dragon's head with a calm expression on his face. The young man was handsome, but there was also a lonesome air about him. He was like a sharp sword that was about to be drawn out of its scabbard, causing all those who saw him to be unable to help themselves but focus their attention on him. It was as if there was an indescribable presence about him that could make him instantly become the center of attention no matter where he was. He was not wearing a starry robe, but the calm and arrogant aura he exuded was above all other statuses. There were also many cultivators behind him. They were dressed differently, making it clear that they came from different forces of power. A freezing glare shone in the eyes of the young man in the sacred constellation robe as he mumbled under his breath, "Yiwang. He is the person with the greatest potential in True Morning Tao World in the past tens of thousands of years. He has even caught the attention of the old monsters in Morning Tao sect. They say that he is the person with the highest possibility of stepping into plain Culpa realm among the cultivators of his generation. He has also been taken in as the direct disciple of Hong Kong Zi, one of the 3 grand sect elders of Morning Tao sect. Yiwang, if I can take you in as my servant, then my power will surpass the other members of my race and reach the top 5. The young man in the sacred constellation robe narrowed his eyes. At the same time, there were 4 world-traversing abyss dragons charging through the area where the Emperor of Abyss True World was stationed. There were more than 100 people meditating with their eyes closed. No one said a single word. The 4 abyss dragons looked similar, but one of them had a dull expression. There was a huge metal hoop piercing through its body and locking it down. In this state, it no longer looked like a noble abyss dragon. Instead, it looked like a beast. The other 3 abyss dragons were different. There were no chains on their bodies, and when they occasionally looked at the abyss dragon bound by the chain, grief would appear on their faces. There is a nostalgic look in the dull eyes of the abyss dragon, as if it was remembering the past, remembering the happy laughter of a young girl and everything in its memories. By the orders of the Lord of Abyss, this abyss dragon has committed a grave crime. Its power to traverse worlds will be destroyed, and it will be sent to this place to be exiled to the barren lands of divine essence. From now on, it will no longer belong to the Emperor of Abyss True World. Its life and death will depend on its own serendipity. An aloof voice echoed in the area, and the eyes of the chained Abyss Dragon became increasingly dull. As the voice spread out, a loud rumble rang out, and a gigantic vortex appeared before the sealed Abyss Dragon. That vortex was like a ghastly mouth that devoured the Abyss Dragon, causing it to disappear without a trace. The grief on the faces of the remaining 3 Abyss Dragons became even greater. As they stared at the spot where their companion had disappeared, they let out sorrowful cries. They knew that they would never be able to see their companion again in this life, and that person would become the shame of the Abyss Dragons. He would be burdened with despair and sink into this place for all eternity. There were only 2 outcomes awaiting it. Either it would be lost or it would die. If Su Ming was here, he would be able to recognize this Abyss Dragon with just one glance. It was the Abyss Dragon beside Yu Xian, and it was also the big yellow dog that the bald crane worshipped. Perhaps there was truly fate in the world that was manipulating all lives, or perhaps there was a thread in each life that was tied to it, causing Yi Wang, the Abyss Dragon, Zheilong Shan Li Hua, and also the clone puppet that Su Ming could not find in the past, and had been taken away by the ancient bronze sword in the world of 9 in Jian Hai. Today's update. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.